Is Linda online?
Yeah, she's here.
Okay, I want to call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, regarding announcements, Ishka, do you have any announcements for us tonight?
There are no announcements this evening.
I do have an opening statement that I would like to make tonight. As we open tonight's meeting, I want to thank those who are taking the time to participate in this meeting, either in person or virtually, as well as my colleagues on the board and the Springford administration, faculty, and staff. I thought it would be appropriate and beneficial to all if I provided an opening statement to briefly take a moment to look back and reflect on what has taken place over the past several months, as well as to provide a look forward to the specific agenda items of this meeting, and more broadly, how we support our key stakeholders as we consider options to once again begin educating our 8,000 plus students across our school district. First, I would like to echo the words recently shared by a Virginia chairperson to her school community. I am angry, I am frustrated, and I am sad. I am angry that we are in this position. I am frustrated with the task to choose a plan that is imperfect. And I am sad, so very sad, that we are faced with this dilemma. I ask your understanding as these are unprecedented times, requiring decisions to be made when the landscape is changing on a weekly and even sometimes daily basis. Decisions which will be made tonight could be overridden by government directives tomorrow or next week. I assure you that we all collectively have nothing but the best intentions. Every decision made is to educate our students, to protect our students and all members of the Springford community, and to deliver on the promises we made as elected officials. Understanding the fluid nature of the pandemic and its impact on our lives, the administration and the board have remained focused on developing plans which will allow our educators to begin teaching our students, no matter what the environment dictates or allows. Extensive work and debate have taken place to this end. Over the past several public board meetings, it has become very evident parents, students, and teachers have very strong feelings about how we will reopen schools in the fall. As a board and administration, it is very important we consider all opinions, not just the most vocal, in person, or vigorous on social media or email. I can assure you I, along with all of the other board members, have received numerous emotionally charged emails providing varying thoughts and approaches to reopening our schools. Emotions have also crept in to the questions and responses asked and answered by many of the board members, which at times has created unnecessary drama and an appearance of lack of direction, preparedness, and leadership. And for that, I apologize. I can assure you I serve with very thoughtful, caring individuals, both on the board and in the administration. However, people approach things differently depending upon their life experiences, background in areas such as education or finance, among other influences. Debate is always appropriate when decisions such as these need to be made, but we must keep our emotions in check and demonstrate strong leadership and professionalism as we conduct this meeting. Tonight, we are here to discuss, debate, and elect a re-entry plan to return our students to an educational setting, whether virtual, in-class, or a hybrid of both. Compromise and an open mind will be key to bringing this to resolution. As I am sure you realize, the decision we make tonight will not result in 100% agreement across parents, teachers, and staff. However, a decision needs to be made to allow time for the administration, teachers, staff, and parents to begin preparing for what will need to be accomplished. I can assure you each member of the board and administration has given a great deal of thought to this decision, as we have a great responsibility to provide a safe learning and working environment for our students and staff during the upcoming school year. I understand that many of you will not support every decision made, but I ask you to respect that a decision will be made. Returning to school is important for the healthy development and well-being As many of us recognize, children learn best when physically present in the classroom. They also learn social and emotional skills, are provided healthy meals, and have options to support their mental health, all of which are difficult to replicate through a virtual setting. With this in mind, we must execute the plan at the appropriate point in the school year, based upon feedback from public health officials, educators, and other experts. No matter what phase we vote in favor of, returning children to school is a very personal decision and will require a great deal of thought and consideration on the part of each parent or guardian. For some, the risks of returning their children to school outweigh the benefits. Others will take differing approaches. On behalf of our administration and board, we wish you the very best as you make this very personal decision, which will be the right one for your family based on your family's needs. We are here to support the Springford community and to provide the best possible educational experience in the safest setting possible. So with that, before we move on to public to be heard on agenda items only, please note that this comment section will be capped at a time limit of 45 minutes, with each speaker being allotted 1.5 minutes to comment on a specific agenda item as identified by the speaker. If time does not permit you to comment, you can email your comments to boardcomment@springford.net, and comments received during the board meeting will be reviewed and included in the official board meeting minutes. The purpose of this is to allow the board to move on to the voting section of the meeting. At the end of the meeting, members of the audience are asked to limit their comments to 1.5 minutes. To allow time for all those who wish to speak to the board president may ask an individual to yield the microphone to the next speaker. Please keep in mind that the public comment portion of the school board meeting is not intended as a question and answer session. Rather, it is a time to make a comment to the board. In order to meet the requirements of Pennsylvania's Sunshine Law, it is necessary to record the names and addresses of all individuals who speak to the board during the meeting. To assure compliance with this requirement, it is essential that those planning to address the board through Zoom use the raise hand feature, and when prompted, state their name and complete address. And with that, public to be heard on agenda items only.
Madam President,
Yes.
I disagree with that position. I think the public should be given their say. We're talking about giving them 90 seconds. And I think they should be given their 3 minutes to make their point. And I don't agree with this, so all due respect.
The thought process behind that was to allow as many people as possible to speak during the 45-minute window because we do have to get to the agenda. What would the rest of the board like to do?
I'd like to limit it because they can send an email. I think some of the emails are quite long and detailed.
Yes, I agree with Colleen. I think we should let them talk at the end, and then they can also email it. But we need to get to the actual meat of the business of the meeting.
So we're going to be voting on something, and we're only going to take some comments. Is that what we're saying? So then the comments that are mailed in don't mean anything. I'm just saying.
I agree with Tom's point. I don't think 90 seconds is quite enough time on an issue this important.
Can we compromise to 2 minutes?
No.
Ironically, I had proposed 2 minutes to begin with.
I think with respect to, I mean, I just let them speak what they're normally. I appreciate the intent behind that, but I think sometimes making a decision for me, I look at which one would I regret the most, and I think limiting the ability to have open comment, as is normally the case, is something that perhaps may not reflect as well. That's just my opinion.
I'd actually go a little bit of a different way. I'm good with the 1.5 minutes. I think when folks begin to talk about their individual circumstances, those are things that should be directed to the building principals to be addressed for their unique circumstances, however. So a minute and a half to kind of weigh in on preferences or comments that they need to be made, but I wonder if we should extend that time limit, leave it at a minute and a half, but extend the time limit to 1 hour so that we can try to get as many community members to weigh in during this initial comment period prior to our vote. I think
Okay.
might be prudent.
Okay, so how about we go with 2 minutes, 1 hour?
3 minutes per person.
I'm fine with the 2 minutes, 1 hour.
Well, help me to understand this. We're going to give folk, and mainly parents, and I happen to be on with one kid left in the district, 90 seconds to speak before whatever we're going to vote on. And then we're going to give the other parents 90 minutes at the end to talk about what?
Whatever their comments are related to the public comment at that point.
But all due respect, Madam President, we know what the comments are going to be regarding. And I just think we're closing the door. We're giving some parents the opportunity to speak for whatever we're going to vote on or discuss. And then at the end, we're giving parents who have a voice, but the voice will not have any impact because the vote's already taken place.
So by limiting the time that each individual has, it allows us to listen, to hear from more constituents within the community. So that's where I was suggesting leave it at the minute and a half, but extend to a full hour. That gives an extra 15 minutes. So, you know, that's a good group more of those comments. So I think that's what the suggestion was.
Bruce, how many people are on the call?
That when they get on, they're speaking, they're making a comment or asking a question related to an agenda item. If not, then we'll cut them off and move to the next person. But I'm always been, as long as I've been on this board, I've always been an opponent and let the people speak. And I'm not going to change it now.
It appears to me that this side of the board is okay with 2 minutes and 1 hour. Over there also? Okay, that's 5 of us. So we're going to go forward with that. With that, let's get the focus on then to public to be heard on agenda items only. Bob?
We have 17 hands raised. First person is Julie Fitzgerald. Julie, you may now make public comment on agenda items only. Please unmute yourself, state your first and last name, as well as your full address, and which agenda item you wish to comment on, please.
Hi, my name is Julie Fitzgerald. I live at 569 Tawny Berry Lane in Collegeville. I'm calling in regards to agenda item number 4, Finance Part A. It's in regards to Edgenuity. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great, sorry. So I've been a teacher for over 20 years in a neighboring school district, and I have concerns regarding the Edgenuity program for the virtual academy. I don't think it's appropriate for elementary age students. There's no synchronous learning. There's no social, like emotional learning experiences with Springboard teachers. So I'd like you to reconsider passing that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next comment is Abby Deerdorf. Abby, please unmute yourself, state your first and last name, as well as your full address, and which agenda item you wish to comment on, please.
Hi, Abby Deerdorf, 704 Collin Court in Royersford. I'm speaking regarding agenda item 2A tonight. I'd just like to continue to encourage the board to vote in a red phase or virtual option for our students and staff, and perhaps that option could be in addition to another option, as some of the school districts in the area do offer parent choice. This is an excellent plan that the educators worked on and have done an amazing job, and I think it's important to let them show it off and lead the way in this region. Also, as evidenced by the current crisis in Major League Baseball, with all the testing, sanitizer, and expert planning, this virus is proving that it cannot be controlled anytime soon. Just yesterday, there were 47 new cases in Montgomery County. I know the decision is not the easy one, but it's what will keep our community safe. Our children need our teachers, and the teachers need our children. Synchronous learning and connection to the Springford community is why we're all here. Many of us, such as myself, moved to this area for this amazing school district. Please help me stay here in this district. I also wanted to warn the board about making decisions solely based upon the survey that was emailed out this week, as it was unsecure. There's no email address people had to add in, so I'm concerned that those results could be a little bit skewed. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next comment is Caroline Meyer. Caroline, please unmute yourself, state your first and last name, as well as your full address and which agenda item you wish to comment on, please.
Hi, Caroline Meyer, 47 Pine Tree Drive, Royersford, PA. Agenda item number 2A. I know it's the 11th hour, and I know your decisions have already been made. I'm no longer asking you to change your decision. I'm now asking you to fully comprehend the effects your decision will have on the students, teachers, and community. To the school board members who are choosing to open in yellow, your decision was made based on a fallacy. Children don't get sick, they don't die, they don't spread it. This is simply not the case. When you make the decision to reopen in yellow, I ask you how many students you're okay with sending to the ICU. How many teachers, bus drivers, community members? How many eulogies will have to be written? How many graves will we have to dig? Montgomery County, as of today, has already lost 844 people. How many of us do you want to add to that? Make no mistake, you will. The simple truth is that you stand between parents burying their children and allowing them to graduate high school and live long, happy lives. The only way to keep this tragedy a fictional horror story is to open in red. And to the members who understand the science of pandemics, let's not forget that's what we're in, a pandemic. I thank you with the highest gratitude. You understand that this horrible situation we're in is only temporary, yet the loss of lives is not. Open in red. It is not the safer or safest decision. It is the only safe decision. I thank you so much, and I look forward to the rest of the meeting.
Next is Stacy Sillar. Stacy, please unmute yourself, state your first and last name, as well as your full address, and which agenda item you wish to comment on, please.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Stacy Seiler, and I live at 107 Fur Drive in Collegeville. I'm speaking to the following agenda items, 2A, 4E through G. As we deliberate and vote on our reopening plan tonight, I want to continue to urge the board members to keep the safety of our children, teachers, and staff throughout your discussions. Us putting our children back into a brick and mortar building, we must remember that diseases are transmitted through close contact and being unable to abide by social distancing. The proposed 3 feet of social distancing within classrooms during the green phase is not adequate. I urge that we open in a virtual school year, allowing the students live online instruction to start the school year would be less disruptive than going back for a few weeks before having to be ripped out of school. We speak to the emotional health of our children, and what is most traumatizing is the lack of control and structure. The teachers and students need to know what is coming. By opening in the red phase, we give the parents, teachers, and students a peace of mind that will not be an in-the-moment change that could happen tomorrow. I speak as an educator whose campus has decided to open, yet I'm still prepared that I will be removed from my classroom at some point this semester and forced to go online. Please keep your Zoom contract. Please have that ready to go day one. Please provide trainings to your teachers and staff on how to integrate their classrooms into campus and Zoom. Give them a head start and allow the teachers a chance to breathe and prepare for their jobs, and the parents a chance to prepare their children for what's coming. I appreciate this chance to speak tonight, and I look forward to your decision. Thank you.
Next is Sarah. Sarah, please unmute yourself, state your first and last name, as well as your full address, and which agenda item you wish to comment on, please.
Hello, my name is Sarah DeNoris. I live at 3 Buckley Circle in Royersford, and I'd like to speak on agenda item 2A regarding reopening. I'd like to point out simply tonight that in March, when schools were closed, there were 34 cases of COVID in Montgomery County, and as of today, there were 9,492 cases in Montgomery County. The pandemic is clearly not contained, and the only safe way to reopen schools is with virtual learning. The reason that statistics show fewer children getting sick is precisely because schools have been closed, thereby protecting them from exposures. Returning to school in yellow or green will put everyone in our community at risk, and I urge you to open with a virtual learning program for this fall. Thank you.
Next is Allison O'Brien. Allison, please state your first and last name, your full address, and which agenda item you wish to comment on, please.
Allison O'Brien, 505 Andover Lane in Collegeville, and I'd like to address item 2A. I'm imploring the board to start the school year in red, completely virtual for at least the first semester of the year so we can have time to see the effect of community spread throughout the country. Children have not been in a school setting since this epidemic began, but now we're going to allow them back in the throes of an uncontrolled pandemic where we can't even predict the outcome. In Florida, there has been a 34% increase of new cases among children in just 8 days. In addition, more children are requiring hospitalization, which has increased by 23%. In Missouri, there was a summer camp that had a 31-point program of pandemic precautions. Despite these meticulous preparations, they were hit by a major outbreak. Their well-intentions failed, as well as countless other camps. This should act as a warning sign for schools hoping to reopen in the fall. In PA, Governor Wolf is not allowing more than 25 people to congregate in any one area. But we are going to send our children to busy hallways and buses and have them sit in classrooms. I implore the board to come to the conclusion that the school year should start in red. Opening in red allows us to see out this pandemic a bit more, especially as we enter cold and flu season in the fall, to see how this season changes the positive cases and mortality rate. The only choice we have is to open in red and reevaluate at a later date. Please do not use our children as guinea pigs. Open red. Thank you.
Next up is Sarah Halpern. Sarah, please state your first and last name, as well as your full address, and which agenda item you wish to comment on, please.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Halpern. I live at 529 Limerick Road in Shanesville, 19473. My comments are regarding agenda items 2 or D. I would like to thank the school board and administration for all of the hard work that has been put in throughout the years to make the school district great. Tonight, I would like to urge the board to strongly consider reopening phase. We have been weeks of the time our daily infections have been rising. The risk of infection to our children, our teachers, and our communities is too great. School is an alternative for those of us with at-risk family members. They're to turn back full time. Don't wish for the stipend that the children will receive in or red phase for the elementary who really require I know the board is facing a responsibility in making this decision, which should not be made lightly. There are factors and variables to be considered when anyone realizes. And I would thank the school board for weighing all of the options and making the best decision for the health and safety of all members of our family.
I'm sorry to interrupt. We cannot hear clearly what you're saying. Could you say in just a few words what you're trying to communicate? Because it's very choppy and I don't want to miss your message.
My message is please reopen in red or yellow. That's the short version.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Carol Mays. Carol, please state your first and last name, unmute yourself, your full address, and which agenda item you wish to speak on, please. Carol, you have to unmute yourself. She's gone. All right, next, Jennifer Armstrong. Jennifer, please state your first and last name, your full address, and which agenda item you wish to speak on, please.
My name is Jennifer Armstrong. I live at 70 Bay Hill Circle in Limerick, and I am commenting on agenda item 2A. As you consider both the proposed yellow and green phases of the spring forward reopening plan, I would ask you to think in your mind and conduct a simulation in which you all experience firsthand what it is exactly you are considering our students to do in order to be in person for a portion of the week or all week. If possible, I would have asked you to sit at desks spaced 3 feet apart wearing a mask for an extended period of time, trying to listen to your teacher at the front of the room who is also wearing a mask. Then transition to your next classroom on the opposite side of the building, as I am a parent of a rising junior in the high school, which I believe has a large number of student population in one building. I would encourage you, if you could have, to take a ride on the school bus in the proposed configuration with the appropriate social distancing with masks, and consider whether the proposed plans are actually feasible for Springford students, faculty, and staff. If it were my preference and I could be sitting and voting with you today, it would be for the red phase, recognizing that those decisions are very difficult and every level of student, whether it's elementary or high school, have different options to weigh. Thank you very much for your.
Next up, we have Judy. Judy, please state your first and last name, your full address, and which agenda item you wish to speak on, please. Judy, you have to unmute yourself. Next up, we have Michael Lebedinsky. Sorry if I butchered your name. Please state your first and last name, sir, your full address, and which agenda item you wish to speak on, please.
Hi, my name is Michael Lebedinsky. My family resides at 2005 Willowwood Drive in Royersford. I'm commenting on agenda item 2A. First, I wanted to thank you for navigating through this challenging time. When you first joined the board, many of you probably could not have imagined the weight of the decisions you are now required to make. As citizens of the bravest country in the history of this planet, a country which initially won and has continued to valiantly fight for our freedom and independence through hard work, courage, bravery, and some risk-taking, it's disheartening to hear the palpable fear in the voices of our fellow citizens. As someone who has followed the data and science of COVID since day one, literally spending hundreds of hours learning about the science of this disease and following its progress, it pains me to see the action disconnected from reality. Sadly, the prevalence of irrational fear and behavior in our community is only overshadowed by the amount of media-induced disinformation fueling it. Your decision tonight on the reopening phase must be based on facts and data, not fear and not emotion. When considering your decision tonight, examine the evidence. Let the evidence guide your thinking. I offer here several facts taken directly from the Pennsylvania Department of Health website and other reputable scientific sources. These facts should guide your reasoning, not a litany of what-ifs and possibles. Fact number one, zero Pennsylvania residents under the age of 20 have died from COVID since the start of the pandemic. Why is this important? Because no scientific evidence in any peer-reviewed study exists substantiating viral transmission from children to adults. Not a single clinical study has confirmed this. Scientific evidence has begun to explain why children are not significant sources of SARS-CoV-2 transmission. Because transmission requires large amounts of ACE2 protein receptors, which are limited in the bodies of children and adolescents, but grow into larger numbers as humans age. Fact number two, above age 20, a total of 157 deaths have occurred among Pennsylvania residents aged 20 to 49. So for Pennsylvania residents under the age of 50, that's a total of 157 deaths in 5 months in a state of 13.
Sir, excuse me, sir, can you just wrap it up now, please? You're over your 2 minutes.
Your decision should be based on local and regional evidence only. Remember, our children are watching and learning from us. They learn from everything you do. By your actions, teach them to make decisions based on data and rational thought, not irrational fear and emotion. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you.
Next up, we have Tom McMonagle. Tom, please state your first and last name, your address, and which agenda item you wish to speak on, please.
Hi, thanks. My name is Tom McMonagle. I live at 26 Gailey Way in Limerick. I just wanted to comment on agenda item 2A. And then just first, I appreciate all the work that's been done by administrators, the various committees, and the board. All the work goes unnoticed. I do want to comment.
Tom, can you just give us your full name and your address that wasn't caught in the beginning?
Yeah, at Tom McMonagle, 26 Gailey Way, Limerick. I just want to comment specifically on the yellow phase reopening plan and how it's sort of counterintuitive to what we're trying to accomplish with these plans for a large number of our students and families, specifically relevant to many K-4 families that have both spouses working during the day. Their children will most likely go to school 2 days a week and will probably go somewhere else for the remaining 3 days, most likely daycare or another childcare facility. This will only increase their exposure to the amount of people that they will interact with on a weekly basis, increasing both theirs and their family's chances to contract the virus. At least with the red or green phase, they will be limited to the number of different people they will be exposed to on a daily basis. I hope you will consider this as part of the decisions to be made tonight. I don't think the application of the yellow phase to all grade levels is the safest approach, especially for the younger student population. Thank you.
Next up is Deborah Roy. Please state your first and last name, your full address, and which agenda item you wish to speak on, please.
Hi, this is Debarati Roy from 203 Holstein Drive, Collegeville, Pennsylvania. This is regarding Agenda 2A and Part of 4. Last meeting, few board members mentioned that based on parent feedback, the preferences are kind of equally split between red, yellow, and green plans. And Dr. Gooden also alluded to the fact that many teachers feel the red plan will be safer. Given the feedback, online petitions, survey results, I hope you will consider giving two choices to the families. In-person instruction to students with special needs and students from families where adult supervision is needed but not possible. Live synchronous but online instructions to the rest of the student body. This will make it easier to follow CDC social distancing guidelines in school while keeping many of the operational costs lower than usual, and most importantly, ensure the safety of vulnerable teachers, staff, and families, as most of them will be able to work remotely. Asynchronous instruction suggested in the cyber program did not work well in the spring and is currently pushing many families to look elsewhere, which is unnecessarily draining funds from the district. Using separate instructional resources in regular and cyber will only cause disruptions when kids try to move between cyber and brick and mortar. A mix of red and green plans can avoid many of these concerns that many teachers, parents are worried about. Hopefully tonight you will be able to make the best decision possible for all our students and families and make Springford a model district in the state. Thank you for listening.
Next up is Leanne Graham. Leanne, please unmute yourself, state your first and last name, your full address, and which agenda item you wish to speak on, please.
Sure, thank you. Leanne Graham, 136 Oak Creek Drive, Limerick. I'm commenting on agenda item 2A, action item decision for phases. I've listened to 9 hours of the school board meetings and several hours of the cyber school question and answer sessions, and I've spent time reviewing the documents on Springford's website and discussion of the plan. And I do really appreciate all the time and effort that's been spent on the planning committees and the discussions at the school board meeting and the difficult decision that you have at hand. What I haven't heard in the plan is for students with IEPs. It's been mentioned at the last 2 meetings as public comments and questions from the board to the administration, but I've yet to hear a plan that addresses students with IEPs in any of them. I have seen no specific mentions of the plans for students with IEPs and plans for special ed other than deferring the questions to the IEP team. When contacts are made to the IEP team, there's no information that can be shared because it's noted that they're waiting for a decision from the board. I've also attended the cyber Q&A session in which questions on special education were basically passed over, again, deferring to the discussions to IEP teams. Basically, these teams are waiting for the decision. And really, it was even said at that cyber school Q&A that cyber school may not be acceptable for all students. So where does that leave us? What if we want our students to be virtual because we don't think it's safe for our students, but yet cyber school doesn't fit either? I've seen many school districts announce their plans along with additional services, including students with IEPs such as Central Bucks School District. It's quite disappointing that this has not yet been addressed by Springford. I do hope we hear tonight before you make your decision the plans for special education from the school administration, and I'd like to thank you for your attention.
Next up is, I'm gonna mess this up, Aviad Adlersberg. Please state your first and last name, your full address, and which agenda item you wish to speak on, please. Go ahead, you're unmuted. Now you muted yourself.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. You got my name perfectly. My name is Aviad Adlersberg. I am at 329 Spring Street in Royersford. I just had a question about what will be the plan, reading over the plan, when a student does present symptoms or if somebody does test positive. Will the whole class be quarantined for 2 weeks? Will the teacher be quarantined for 2 weeks? I'm not sure I really understand what happens when you mix this large number of people and people will have symptoms. It may even just be the flu and they may not be tested, but we won't know that. Or if they are tested and they're positive, what will be the plan? Are we just going to ignore it? Because once you've tested positive, you've exposed everyone there. what happens when one of the parents gets sick because maybe a child was exposed and brought that in? I mean, I'm just not sure who's going to be responsible if something terrible happens or if somebody gets sick. It just feels like you'll be open for about 2 weeks, and then the second somebody gets sick, you're going to go from one quarantine to another, one class to another as the exposure spreads. And we've seen this in other countries, right? We've seen this in Israel, for example, where they tried to open the schools and they did everything right, and it just ripped right through the school system there within 2 weeks. So I'm just wondering if you've taken any consideration here in your plan about what happens when there is a positive case. I'm hoping we're not just going to ignore it. That's all I had to say, and I'll yield the rest of my time. Thanks.
Next up is Becky Cole. Becky, please state your first and last name, unmute yourself, your full address, and which agenda item you wish to speak on, please.
Hi, my name is Becky Cole, 135 Hall Street, Spring City. I was calling to discuss item 2A. I would strongly recommend that you decide to open in the red plan. I'm asking this even though my children did struggle with the virtual learning in the spring. I'm just much more concerned with their safety at this point. The virus is not contained nearly enough to put our children at risk. My sister had COVID in April, and she still has not fully recovered. She's still having issues with breathing and whatnot. We do not know the long-term effects of this virus, and I do not want to gamble with my children's health. And I do appreciate the difficulty that you must have with trying to make a decision. And I really hope that by opening in red, we can kind of wait to see how this virus starts to go, and we just have a good start to the school year, and then maybe, make changes in the future. But
Next up is Stottlemyre family. Please state your first and last name, your full address, and the agenda item you wish to speak on, please.
Hi, good evening. This is Rebecca Stottlemyre. I'm at 29 Penstone Court, Schwenksville. I'd like to comment on 2A, 4B, and 4D. For 4B and 4D, when you get to those items, I would just like a little bit more clarity on what the difference is between the two of them. They appear to be very similar, and just looking for some clarity would be appreciated. For 2A, we just suggest if the school does open in yellow or green, that the administration and the board consider making sure that they take some data points along the way. Cases, infection rate, success of quarantine, length of time for notifications, those type of things, I think would be very important for the district to hear, and then especially be able to have parents make educational decisions based off of the actual facts that are occurring. Thank you so much.
Next up is Christina Marsh, sorry if I messed that up. Please state your first and last name, full address, and the agenda item you wish to speak on, please. Yeah, there you go. Go ahead, Christine. Go ahead, Christine. All right, next up is Ruth Hanson. Ruth, please state your first and last name, unmute yourself, and the agenda item you wish to speak on, and your full address, please.
My name is Ruth Hanson. I live at 84 Bartlett Drive in Schwenksville, Pennsylvania. I'd like to comment on agenda item 2A. I would like to encourage the board to open in the green phase, or at least have this an option for children with special needs. For many special needs children, virtual education equals no education. Please consider all students, including those with special needs, in making your decision. Neurotypical students have several options they can explore if their families don't agree with the board's decision, including Springford Cyber School. Special needs children have very few options, and I would say next to no options depending on your financial situation, outside of the public education that is their right under IDEA. Thank you.
Next up is Kate Doyle. Kate, please unmute yourself, state your first and last name, your full address, and which agenda item you wish to speak on, please.
Thank you.
My name is Kate Doyle. I live at 310 Woodland Drive, Collegeville, PA. I am speaking on agenda item 2A. Thank you all for all your efforts to navigate this complex and unprecedented pandemic world. On behalf of all of our students, teachers, and staff, I recognize how extraordinarily challenging school reopening planning is for all of you. I implore you vote to start the school year in the red phase. By planning to start the school year in a 100% virtual setting, the district can ensure the safety of all students, teachers, and staff. Testing results are currently taking over a week to process and cases are rising in our region. In addition, the current phase of our county could change in the next 5 weeks. By planning to open in the virtual setting will allow parents to prepare for the start of school in the most restrictive phase in case schools are closed at a county or state level. Starting in the red phase will enable parents, teachers, and students to acclimate themselves to the new platform before moving into any in-person classes. In the meantime, the weeks leading up to school can be used by the district to develop creative solutions to provide students with possible face-to-face time to meet the teachers. For example, outdoor meetings with social distancing and masks could be held for teachers, parents, and students to introduce themselves in the first week of school, similar to open house. Also, as stated in previous comments, please consider developing a specific plan for in-person learning for those with IEPs while in the red phase. By working with those students, while most are working virtually, the staff and students will have an environment that is lower risk. And again, as previously stated in the last meeting, please ensure that teachers who volunteer or request to be part of the cyber school have a building to return to once things return to in-school. Thank you very much for your time.
Next up is Stephanie McGowan. Stephanie, please unmute yourself, state your first and last name, full address, and which agenda item you wish to speak on, please. Stephanie, you're muted. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Stephanie McGowan, 60 Red Cedar Circle, Collegeville, PA. Item 2A. Thank you to the Board of Administration for all the hard work in getting us to this point. I will be very short. I vote for I believe the red phase is the safest phase for us to open in. All of our data is based on data with children out of school, students out of school. And for many of the reasons as stated by my preceding speakers, I believe that opening in red is the safest option for us. I believe that once we do open in red, we have an opportunity to learn from what is going on either in other districts or in our own and make better decisions going forward. Thank you very much. Good luck with your voting.
Next up is Kavitha Krish. Please state your first and last name, unmute yourself, state your full address, and which agenda item you wish to speak on, please.
Good evening. My name is Kavitha Krishnamachari, and I live in 46 Star Monterey, Collegeville. I want to comment on Agenda 2A. I urge the board to vote to open the school in red and implement synchronous learning online. The pandemic is nowhere under control, and states like Florida has clearly shown that there are numerous children who have been infected. I know it is not easy for the kids to learn online, but nothing about this pandemic has exactly been easy or ideal for that matter. Let's do the right thing and open in red so that as the year progresses and better control is exercised over the pandemic, kids will all be ready to come back to school safely and happily. Thank you so much.
Next up is Kim Wallace. Kim, please unmute yourself, state your first and last name, your full address, and which agenda item you wish to speak on, please.
Hey there, I'd like to speak regarding, can you hear me okay?
Yes, first and last name and full address, please.
Sure, Kim Wallace, 453 Lower Indian Head Road, over in Collegeville. Item number 3B, if you're voting to approve extracurricular activities tonight, I don't know if you're able to or not able to accomplish voting on 321 people. If you are not, I please hope that you would give preference to those in the fall season and any those that have any vacancies. Thank you.
Next up is Bonsall. Bonsall, please unmute yourself, state your first and last name, full address, and which agenda item you wish to speak on, please. You just muted yourself.
Jennifer Bonsall, 115 Pikeland Avenue, Spring City. I want to speak to item 2A. First, I want to thank the board. Any decision that you make tonight is not going to be received well by all. I'd hate to be in your position, but I do implore you to look at green options
specifically for those with IEPs and special education, as we know that socialization is part of the development of most of these children, and they're falling behind due to that lack of socialization. I know from personal experience that my own child is regressing. According to Johns Hopkins University, every year 1 billion people get the flu. Of that, 290,000 of those people die from the flu. If we are keeping our children away from similar circumstances, a number of our children are going to fall behind. Again, thank you. Please look for green options for those children who need the socialization to improve their education. Thank you.
Next up is Rebecca Roberts. Rebecca, please unmute yourself, state your first and last name, full address, and the agenda item you wish to speak on, please.
Hello, this is Rebecca Roberts. I'm at 33 Sunset Road in Limerick. I'd like to first talk to agenda item 2A. I'm a faculty, a science faculty professor at a college, and I understand the science and have read the science. And I disagree with the earlier comments about going to the science. Well, yes, you have to go to the science, but you have to go to all of it. A study just came out that showed that kids over 10 transmit the virus at the same rate as adults. Their ACE inhibitors are the same, receptors are the same. So unlike adults, however, they don't have the responsibility needed to strictly follow regulations. Also, we do not know the long-term effects of this disease. People keep referring it as if it's like the influenza virus, the Spanish influenza flu, and it's not. It's more like the polio pandemic with long-term potential effects for our children. So I urge you to open in red. Thank you.
Next up is Christy Ward. Christy, please unmute yourself, state your first and last name, full address, and the agenda item you wish to speak to, please.
Hi, my name is Christy Ward. I live at 534 Quincy Street in Collegeville. I would like to speak on agenda 2A. Thank you to the board for all your time. I know this decision is very hard, but I would like you to take into consideration the mental health of the students opening in a virtual environment. I think rushing to a virtual option for every student is going to be detrimental to many children. I think it should be a choice to send our children back. Not everyone can learn in a virtual environment. Just like the families who want the only choice virtual for their kids, I would like the option for my family that works best as well. For the families that want red, it's nice that you offer that cyber option for those students and their families. I would also like to see the green option for families that want green. Children need social interaction. Please give the parents the choice to send their children back. Thank you.
Next up is Sunil Sahu. I'm sorry if I messed that up. Please unmute yourself, state your first and last name, full address, and the agenda item you wish to speak to, please.
Thank you. My first name is Sunil, last name Sahu. Live in 341 Goldman Drive, Phoenixville, and I'm talking about agenda item 2A. Just to keep it short, I would like to vote for red, so that we don't send kids to school and bring the because it could spread not only with the kids, it could spread with the parents, and then parents are going out for other work, so it will spread out. So just please open the school in red zone.
Next up is Matthew Wanamaker. Please unmute yourself, state your first and last name, full address, and the agenda item you wish to speak to, please.
Matthew Wanamaker, 301 Montgomery Avenue, Oak, Pennsylvania. I would like to ask the school board to please think of the teachers and other faculty when making this decision. Looking at the roster, there's almost 1,200 employees. Kids may not be getting as sick as adults, but there are also 1,200 adults to think about when you make this decision. Thank you.
Next up is Erica Hermans. Erica, please unmute yourself, first and last name, full address, and the agenda item you wish to speak to, please.
Hi, good evening. Erica Hermans, 204 Abbey Drive in Royersford. I want to speak to agenda item 2A. First and foremost, I want to encourage the board to open in the red phase. Earlier this meeting, someone quoted 0 individuals under the age of 20 have passed away in Pennsylvania. Frankly, I'm not willing to test the validity of those flimsy stats with my children's lives. And I want to know who on the board is willing to take that gamble. Our children cannot be collateral damage. Past performance and what has happened in the past does not indicate what's going to happen in the future. I will take short-term regression of my child's education over deaths. As of 7 p.m. today, there was 2 change.org petitions circulating on social media. Our school board president opened up by saying not just to hear the most vigorous and loud voices, but all voices. Here's a subset of the largest voices. There were 631 signatures supporting virtual return to school and 74 supporting back in school. It's clear from the forums what the majority of Springford families are asking for. Please do not discount what your constituents are asking for and approve a virtual return to school. Reopen in the red.
Next up is Kathy. Kathy, please unmute yourself, state your first and last name, full address, and the agenda item you wish to speak about, please.
Kathy Morris, 420 Church Street, Royersford. Agenda 2A, the reopening. Thank you guys so much for all your hard work and consideration into a very difficult decision. I would just really like a choice. I think green might be a little hasty with everybody's concerns, but like a number of parents said, we do have to consider the special ed population, and quite frankly, a lot of them need in-person teaching, even if it's part-time. So I would just ask the board to at least vote with the choice, red or at least yellow, so that we can get some of these kids that really need back in school safely back in school. Thank you so much.
Next up is Chris M. Chris, please unmute yourself, state your first and last name, address, and the agenda item you wish to speak about, please.
Chris Martinez, 328 Spring Street, Royersford. Just want to speak on 2A. I agree that I think we need to reopen in the red, but my question is, and I don't know if the board's even thought about this, but if we reopen in the red, should we or should we not get some sort of credit on our property taxes? Because you guys are getting over $3,700 a year from me, and I'm sure from every other homeowner. Should we have to pay that if we're not sending our children to a brick and mortar school?
Next up is Liam. Please unmute yourself, state your first and last name and your full address, and the agenda item you wish to speak about, please. Liam, you're muted. Next up is Rashimi Goswami. Please unmute yourself, state your first and last name, your full address, and the agenda item you wish to speak about, please.
Hi, this is Rohit Goswami at 58 Fun Club Drive, Collegeville, Pennsylvania 19426. I want to understand today from the board meeting is how would you transition from one phase to another should you need to, right? So if we are in red, things improve, how would you transition to yellow or from yellow back to red? As there is a high chance that if one of the kids gets it, how would you control that transmission? So I want to understand, let's say, if you're approved with red or yellow, let's say, how would you transition it back to red? My second question is around LMS and cyber program. Those are running on 2 separate platforms. I want to understand more how would you make sure the 2 curriculums are running together so that if parents want, they can transition from one phase to another. That's it. Thank you so much, Jeffrey.
Next up is Carrie. Carrie, please unmute yourself, state your first and last name, your full address, and the agenda item you wish to speak about, please.
Hi, my name's Carrie Alice. I live at 102 Roboto Boulevard in Royersford. I want to speak on agenda item 2A. I believe we should open in the green phase to help support all the children that have 504s for ADHD and anxiety, not only the IEPs and the special ed kids, and also take into consideration all these families that have been traveling all summer just to the shore, just around the state of Pennsylvania, and also all the children that are already in daycare. They wear masks almost all day in those daycares. So consider that, please, when you are making your decisions. Thank you.
Next up is Tara. Tara, please unmute yourself, first and last name, full address, and the agenda item you wish to speak about, please.
Hi, my name is Tara Grotto. I'm at 79 Grandview Drive, Royersford, PA. My comments about agenda item 2A. My feedback is on the yellow plan. My going in position was that I wanted to try and give the kids an opportunity to get that in-person interaction. I do have a child with the 504, so I can definitely respect that. However, my concern is the 3 days they're home and the lack of synchronous learning that goes on, especially with the older grades. So my ask would be, if you do look at the yellow plan, potentially revisit how much synchronous learning or what that education looks like on those 3 days, so it's not enrichment, as I believe it was explained in the last board meeting. That's all. Thank you.
Next up is Dawn Skelton. Dawn, please unmute yourself, first and last name, full address, and the agenda item you wish to speak about, please.
Dawn Skelton, 11 Shawnee Lane. I want to speak about agenda item 2A. I implore the board to vote for either green or yellow. I have watched my children throughout this entire situation go from bright, happy, shiny kids that want to learn to they're not themselves anymore. There's way more to this than the chance of getting sick. And I find the people that want to go to red, to be quite honest, selfish, because they have other options. I don't want anyone taking away the options for my kids, because I know them best and I know what they need, and they need to get back to some semblance of normal. They need to be in front of a teacher. They're completely unmotivated learning at home. They need some kind of normal. They're melting down. They're not themselves. I want the board to take into consideration some form of the mental stability or mental health of these kids before making a decision, because taking away the option of them getting back to some kind of normal is not an option that my family sees as viable. Thank you.
Next up is Kristen Landis. Kristen, unmute yourself, please. First and last name, full address, and agenda item you wish to speak about, please.
Hi, my name is Kristen Landis. I'm at 434 North Limerick Road in Schwanksville, and I would like to address item 2A, the reopening. First, I want to say thank you so much to all the administrators and the board for all your time, effort, emotions that have gone into this. It is so valued in my household. And I also want to say thank you for creating a cyber option, because all of these calls seem to have a lot of fear about letting their children go back to school, which is why it's amazing that we have the cyber option, so no parent has to send their child to school if they don't want to. I understand the cyber option is not synchronous learning, and people are upset about that, but I ask the community to understand that there's no right answer for everyone, and everyone is going to have to bend in some way. Every child, every parent, every teacher. The situation will not be ideal no matter what choice is made, but no one has to send their child to school in Springport School District if they are scared for their life because of the cyber option. And I ask the board to give families a choice of what they do, because every household, every child in the household even could need different things. That's it. Thank you.
Next up is Heather Staley. Heather, please unmute yourself. First and last name, full address, and agenda item, please.
Heather Staley, 412 New Street, Spring City, PA. Agenda item 2A for the reopening. As a lot of people have said, I think that choice would be better. I think that a lot of the people, like the person who just spoke before me, said that they always have the cyber option. The mental health of all students, anyone in any grade, is also at risk. I agree with the other parent who was speaking about how her child has changed. My daughter went from crying every year when school ended to being so relieved that she didn't have to do the cyber option. She had always been a great learner and everything else, and this year it was very difficult. I believe that we need to have that option. I believe it should be the parents that make that decision. We're the ones who know what our children need. And we do, as she spoke very nicely right before me, have the cyber option. So if people really don't want to go back and they want to be in the red and they're scared for their children, I understand their concerns. But also there are some of us who have concerns that are more about the mental health of our children. And as a first responder myself, I can tell you from being on the front lines, it can be mitigated. You can have the things in place that can keep you safe, and that we have to all work together and realize that sometimes it needs to be the parents to make the choice. So I urge you honestly to let us have that choice for brick and mortar. Thank you.
Next up is Jasmine Ewing. Jasmine, please unmute yourself, first and last name, full address, and agenda item, please.
Hi, this is actually Brian Ewing, her husband, address 917 Mennonite Road, Royersford, Pennsylvania. I am calling, as everyone else is calling, on agenda item 2A. I don't have an opinion, or I'm not going to give my opinion, although I do have one. I'm more interested in whether or not we're prepared to go in either phase that you may vote for tonight. And I've listened to the school board meetings over the last few weeks, as long as they have gone, and I looked at your PEE that you put together last week. And it appeared to me in the unbudgeted items for the things that you need to go green are all relying upon whether or not you got a grant that as of last week you have not received, and it could be received by July 31st, but we don't know. So I guess my question is, if you vote to go green, are we going to be ready to go green in 3.5 weeks, since it is July 27th? It also appeared, or it seems like you voted for the new LMS system last week, depending upon the solicitor reviewing the contract and making sure that everything was okay with how much it was going to cost and so on and so forth. Again, we're 3.5 weeks from school starting. If you decide to go to a cyber option or to the online option, are you going to be ready with the LMS to go when we open up the doors? Or are we going to have to start with one system and switch to the next in a couple weeks after school starts? I'm a little concerned because watching the school board meetings over the last few weeks and watching, quite frankly, for lack of a better term, a lot of bickering that's been going back and forth on the school board. And to see that you guys spent the first 15 minutes of this meeting determining how long the public should be able to speak or not speak is kind of a little disappointing to me. I'd like to remind you all that you all are elected officials, and you are all put there by the people that you need to hear from. So limiting them to 1.5 minutes or 3 minutes, or spending 15 minutes discussing on how long it should be, needs to be dropped, and you guys need to focus on what needs to be done. We got 3.5 weeks before our students and our teachers are supposed to report back however we're going to report back. So I would hope tonight that we do make a decision, but whatever that decision is, I hope we are ready to do it. Because from my point of view, it doesn't appear as though we are in either way that we go. I do want to read the one thing that I saw that I've seen every week that you've sent this out.
Thank you, Mr. Ewing. Thank you, but we're past the 2 minutes, but thank you. Moving on.
Next up is Aparna. Aparna, please unmute yourself, first and last name, full address, and agenda item, please.
Hi, good evening. My name is Aparna Tula. I live at 49 Goldfinch Circle, Phoenixville. Agenda item 2A regarding school reopening plan. In my opinion, or I would like to say, I would like to urge the board to open the school in a red phase.
Can we please have your name and address, please, to start? We didn't hear that at the beginning.
Oh, okay. All right. Let me start again then. My name is Aparna Tula. I live at 49 Goldfinch Circle in Phoenixville. All right. Okay. I would like to urge the school board to open in a red phase, which in my opinion is the best option for the students, teachers, and the entire community. At least open the school in a red phase, at least for the first marking period maybe, so that you can have lesser number of moving parts as you start the school year, and it will allow you to lay a good foundation for the school year. Another point that I wanted to make was what you're trying to achieve by having the entire student body or the entire community follow either the red or yellow or the green plan is what has this board in this position of indecision. Other neighboring districts are allowing parents to choose a virtual option in addition to an in-person option. The cyber option, which is being positioned as an alternate virtual option, is not really comparable to an in-school or a virtual option. Most Springford students and parents will not choose this option, in my opinion, and based on what I've seen and heard other parents. So, so in closing, what I would like to say is that if it's not possible to open in a red phase, then at least allow the parents and students to choose a virtual option while some students go back in school. That should that will also cut down on the number of people coming into the building. It'll also allow students with special needs who need to have in-person instruction and care to have that option. That's all. Thank you.
Next up is, it's a phone name, Galaxy S10e. Please unmute yourself, first and last name, full address, and your agenda item you wish to speak about, please. You're unmuted. Go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, hi. My name is Heather McCullough. I'm at 14 Redtail Court in Limerick. I feel that the board should vote in red as much as I want my kids to go back to school. And I do feel that mental health is imperative. Life, unfortunately, that is more important. And all it's going to take is one student death or one teacher death, God forbid, that Springford is going to be all over the news and not in a good way. The safety of our community is more important, and we can deal with mental health issues and other issues in a different way, but lives are at stake here. And you see adults walking around without wearing proper masks or wearing them properly. How do you expect kids in classrooms to follow those instructions when the adults don't? Thank you very much.
Mr. Catalano, we'll take one more comment from the Zoom, and then we're going to come here to our in-person who has a comment to make. At that point, I anticipate we'll be close to the 8:43, which would be the stop time, would be the full hour for the board comment or public comment on agenda items only in this upfront portion. And remember, please, to the public, that the email link is available. And if you do not have an opportunity to make your comment, we ask you to please use that email link. Thank you. So one more comment from in your line on Zoom.
Okay, last one is Manoj, sorry if I messed that up. Please unmute yourself, first and last name, your full address, and the agenda item you wish to speak about, please.
Hi, thank you for giving me the chance. My name is Manoj Kumar, and I am at 146 Fairfield Circle North, Royersford, and I'm going to speak about point 2A. So I'm of a strong opinion that schools in this time, in this unprecedented time, schools should not be open because it will be very risky for the students as well as for the teachers and entire staff, and even adults are finding it difficult to wear masks all the time, and students it will be very difficult for them to wear masks and then practice social distancing. So, and this is like a lot of research is going on, and definitely sooner or later we would have some treatment, a very near good solution for this infection also, or some vaccine in near future, hopefully. So at that time we can definitely start opening the school once something is there inside. So like all time, this will also pass. So till the time we should be careful and not take any decision for which we will regret later. Thanks for giving me a chance.
Okay, the remaining people will have comment at the end of the meeting. I believe we're going to in-person comments now. Thank you.
We are. Thank you. Mrs. Olson.
Thank you. Kelly Olson, 711 Sourwood Lane. I'm speaking on 3B as well as 2A. As some of you may know, my daughter Lucy plays basketball. She absolutely loves the game and all aspects of it. As a rising senior, I mourn the possibility that she might not have a final season. Though some of you may be rolling your eyes that I'm advocating for an athlete who plays a game, I actually am standing here advocating for all extracurriculars. I'm advocating for the kids with passions, the actors, the musicians, the athletes, who have worked so hard to grow, advance, and hone their skills. If anyone has ever passed the school parking lot or heard the beating drums of the marching band at 11 p.m., you can appreciate the dedication and respect these kids have for their crafts. Through these extracurriculars, these kids are building foundations for future professions. And because of this, Extracurriculars are just as essential to the physical, emotional, and mental well-being and education of the Springford student. Let me repeat that. Extracurricular activities, teams, and clubs are essential. In fact, basketball may be just as important to Lucy as a STEM class is to a budding engineer, which also may end up being Lucy. Also, keep this in mind, that the high school careers of these students is finite. Time is of the essence. So I request that you vote with this in mind. The senior class has only 1 year as the senior class. Please do not steal their opportunities away by opening in anything other than green. Tomorrow is promised to no one. This is there today. Make it green and give us an option, please. Thank you.
Are there any other comments from the audience here in front of us? Small audience here in front of us. Okay. So is the board okay then moving on to the next phase of the meeting? Okay. So with that, we ask Dr. Gooden to please give us a recap highlighting the bullets of each of the 3 plans and closing with your administration's recommendation. A very brief recap as we discussed.
Very good. Remember that in the green phase, all students attend school in person Monday through Friday. Parents are required to self-monitor children for symptoms 30 minutes prior to leaving for school. Children who ride school buses on regular schedules will be required to wear face coverings. Face coverings will be required in all school buildings. In every situation where they're not able to appropriately social distance at 6 feet, desk and classroom will be spaced to the extent possible. We'll have hand sanitizers, disinfecting wipe. All school buildings will be cleaned and sanitized at the end of each day. High-touch areas will be sanitized once during the school day. Extracurricular activities will continue to follow their approved COVID-19 safety plans. Non-essential visitors and volunteers will not be permitted to enter the building without an appointment. And should we have a confirmed case, we'll notify all who've been in contact with the child so that families can monitor. So that's basically the green phase, as much as possible coming back in a normal situation. The yellow phase, as we proposed, we would divide the student body into half. We create blue days and gold days. Half the students, each half would be in the building 2 days a week, and they would be 3 days a week online with teacher-created assignments. Wednesday is prep day for teachers to prepare these online lessons. We will be using our own curriculum. Extracurricular activities would continue as scheduled following appropriate safeguards. Masks would be worn in transit, both to and from school and in the school building. Face masks would also be worn anytime students and teachers cannot maintain 6 feet. Families not wanting to adhere to face mask rules will need to enroll in cyber. Students in assigned seat on buses, classrooms, and cafeteria to facilitate contact tracing. Students should be kept home at all times when sick. If children are sent to school sick, they'll be sent home. And should we have a confirmed case, we will notify all who've been in contact with the child so that families can monitor. And then lastly, quickly, our red phase, all students attend school online. We will provide, increase the opportunity for students to engage in synchronous live instruction during school closures. Teachers will create the lesson assignments using Springford curriculum, and lessons and assignments are built daily by their scheduled teachers. So we have 3 phases that we have been working on for the last 3 months. We've been working to consider, and I will say that our goal throughout this process has been to try to bring students back into school as safely as possible. As you've heard through the community comment, there's a lot of wide variety of feelings on this topic. We have, as many of the board members know, you yourselves and administration have been getting a number of emails with offering advice, suggestions, opinions, and so we can see that there's a broad spectrum of feeling on this issue. We have been operating under the guidelines that were put down to us by the Pennsylvania Department of Education and the governor's orders to build our plans for each of those three phases. And I will say that, and I'm probably speaking for the rest of the administrative team as well as members of this board, this is probably the most difficult recommendation I've ever had to make in my career because without being overly dramatic, it is a serious issue that could have consequences for members of our community. And so it's a serious decision that we've had to weigh and consider. We've also looked at some of the other surrounding variables to our opening plans. Our ability to get the supplies that we need in a timely fashion for the opening of school, being one of the variables that we're working with. We also have been working with the variables of maintaining and obtaining or making sure that we have enough teaching staff in any of these plans. So I met with my administrative team today with the understanding that our goal has been to try to build plans that would bring our students back into school. That has been our goal. That has been what we have worked at. And I'm at the point right now where we have to make a recommendation to this board for consideration. And so looking at all the variables, looking at everything going on, our ability to maintain an atmosphere in the school buildings that is going to be deemed safe and appropriate for all concerned. We certainly need our supplies, which we don't have yet. We have concerns about our ability to get those supplies in a timely fashion. All those things factor into our recommendation that we start off in our red plan for one grading period, and then we move over to our hybrid plan. We would recommend that we start off as a soft start, if you will. I don't see that impacting our extracurriculars. Most of our extracurriculars at this point are outside. We are actually running these programs right now as we speak. So our recommendation to the board is to open up soft in online environment and prepare by the end of the first quarter to move into our hybrid plan. And that's our recommendation.
So it seems to me that you're saying, Dr. Gooden, with confidence that your administration is prepared to move forward with the red with a focus on going yellow by the end of the first quarter. And that during this time, we would continue to evaluate, look at the metrics, secure the PPE, answer any additional questions regarding the contact tracing, how it's working out with the teachers, how it's working out with the bus situation, how it's going to work out with food service, should we go to the yellow plan?
Yes.
And that's fair to say?
Yes.
Okay, and with that in mind, is it possible to look at that yellow in a modified state? Some of the suggestions that came in the emails would be to move the students, say in the blue, to Monday, Tuesday, and the gold Thursday, Friday, to allow for a deep clean on Wednesdays and over the weekends. The board can have some discussion about that also, but in this way it would mitigate the risk to the students and the teachers. Also, there have been plenty of emails and discussion about exploring the opportunity for students to be able to go all virtual in the yellow phase. And I know that there are issues that would have to be addressed about that, but I would like to see that if that was even possible, maybe with teachers that wouldn't be teaching in the classroom for whatever reason, if that would be something that could be worked out to allow for students that could potentially have to be out of school, or students who just Parents don't want them in there, but they want them with their teachers, and maybe they're not ready to send them yet, but they would be at some future point. I also like the cost for AV equipment in the classrooms that could facilitate more synchronous learning, for that to be fleshed out during this first quarter. And if still parents don't have the comfort level, they do have the option for cyber, and that remains on the table. So that would be where my position is. If the rest of the board would like to weigh in on that, and then we'll take a vote.
The only thing I want to clarify is we do have concerns about our ability to get the grant-funded equipment and supplies we need for opening in yellow. Face masks, Clorox wipes, or those sanitizing wipes for wiping down desks. Everything that was on our list as far as supplies, we have questions about our ability to get that in. So even if the board were to make a decision tonight to go to a hybrid opening, for example, or even for that matter of fact, a green opening, I cannot sit here and guarantee that we're going to have those supplies in. We are still waiting for our grant money to come in. We have the POs set. We've worked with our vendors. They're ready for the orders. We're just kind of waiting for our money to come through. But by the same token, even if we were to have placed that order last week, according to the vendors that we're talking to, there is no guarantee that we're going to get these items prior to the beginning of school.
So what is their anticipated date?
They're not giving an anticipated date.
Yeah, they're not going to give dates. I live this every day. I have a couple questions. One is that doesn't it make sense for us to just focus on the first quarter and start talking about what the second quarter could look like at a later date, and not worry so much about what the second quarter is going to look like? Also, for the last couple of weeks, I've been consistently concerned, and we've heard it multiple times tonight. We still haven't really discussed anything about special ed. We still haven't discussed anything about IEPs. We still haven't talked about curriculum enhancement. So again, and my position is that although I truly want to get these kids back in school, I think right now it's not a feasible approach. I think there's still tons and tons of conflicting information out there, and I think that it's a very tough decision to make. But since April, May of this year, I've started talking about curriculum enhancement. I wasn't comfortable, and for all the right reasons. We knew where we were at, and I've said this last week, and I think I said it the week before. We knew where we were at the fourth quarter because it was just dumped on us, and we did the best, and I commend everyone that was involved, administration, teachers, everyone that was involved in trying to get something put together for our students. And I'll defend that all day long. But after that fact, I start talking about curriculum enhancement, and I start talking about synchronous learning. And we've heard it continuously that there's a concern from the parents about the curriculum enhancements, the enrichment, synchronous learning. And, we don't seem to ever get to that. And it's frustrating to me because we spend a lot of time talking about PPE, which is all extremely important. But if we're not providing the curriculum for these kids, for the students, I'm concerned of how far they potentially could fall behind. And I also hear that there's other schools like North Penn, which is a much bigger school district than us, and they're providing choices. They're opening up with choice. And again, I'm not supporting that. I'm just curious how a school district like North Penn is able to open up with choice. And we seem to be not having any of that type of conversation. Do we know how North Penn is doing it?
No, we don't, Mr. DeVella. I called, placed a call to their superintendent today and had not received word back from him.
Because there's many other districts around us that are opening up with choice. So I think, again, that's something that we should be exploring. Well, but that's probably going to be after the first quarter because we have to get ourselves organized. We need to start rolling forward. We're bringing in a new LMS system. We still need to find content for the LMS system. The teachers need to be trained. And I also, where's the staff if we open up in red in the first quarter? Is the staff working from home, or are we bringing them into the schools? What's the plan there? Because I think that it would be beneficial if we start looking at bringing the staff in during that time. and let them teaching out of their classrooms. I mean, there's only one person per room, so I think that the social distancing is fine. And I think all the materials and all the everything that they need is in their classrooms. So is that part of your recommendation? Has that been discussed? Where I mean, so there's a lot of questions.
It has been discussed as far as teachers coming in. If we started off online learning, students, we would ask students or parents, or we would ask teachers to come in and work out of their classroom. I see no reason why we couldn't do that. We would make accommodations on an individual basis as needed. I've already spoken to HR about that. Indeed, concerning special ed, Mr. Rizzo has been working with our special ed supervisors to make sure that we're going to be able to service our special ed students in a way that was. Remember, in the spring, we were under a government or governor imposed shutdown, which means that we couldn't bring anybody into the buildings at all, ever. And so this would be a decision that we have made, and we would ask for the flexibility to meet individual students' programming needs to the best of our ability under that circumstance. We want to make sure that we're trying to address we have a number of students with IEPs and /504s that we would be able to work with to make accommodations for under a plan such as I'm proposing. The same with extracurriculars. As I mentioned, I believe that we can, until something else comes along or some other reason that we're shut down and not allowed to do that, I would say that we continue to operate under the health and safety plans that we've approved for our extracurriculars. They've already been approved. We did that a few weeks ago, and they are indeed practicing as we speak. Concerning and I know I've heard positive things about the experience from the spring. I've heard negative things about the experience from the spring as far as the quality of the product that we were able to deliver. And as has rightly been discussed, and that we had about 2 weeks to turn this thing around. We've now had almost 5 months to work out those issues, to make sure that should we have to open up with online learning again, that we would have a better product for our families. It would be a better experience. And so the RED committee, that has been their sole focus of building a better product should we have to open in something other than in person. So as I mentioned, we have, we've spent a lot of time planning for this. We do have concerns about some of the, we have concerns about our ability to get supplies. And I would hate to see the board make a decision tonight only to turn around at the August board meeting and find out we don't have anything, we can't open. We don't know what we're going to be able to get, and we need these supplies. And so that's hence our recommendation.
I got a couple of questions, Dr. Goodman. Normally when you're planning, you have successors and predecessors. Something has to occur before the next activity can start. So I heard one thing from Madam President, but then I'm hearing that this is being driven by supplies not able to be purchased.
No.
When did we find that out?
Pardon?
When did we find that out?
I just mentioned that's a variable.
But that's a major variable.
It is a major variable. It is indeed a major variable. I agree.
So my question is, when did we find out? When did we find out that we could not purchase PPE? Because my question leads to, if we knew a month ago, 6 weeks ago, we've made several presentations up here about all three plans.
Yes.
And if this was a driving predecessor to open, and we knew we wouldn't have it, I don't understand the point of all these presentations.
I think I would just comment that it's a phased reopening, that yes.
No, it's not.
Well, it is a phased reopening.
Well,
I disagree.
I just want to, last week we approved, did we?
Proposed motion, the proposed recommendation, or the recommendation from the administration is a phased reopening. They're saying red for the first quarter, to evaluate with the intention to go yellow at the end of the first quarter. That is clearly what I heard coming.
But Madam President, Dr. Gooden is saying that we don't know when we would get supplies. So how do you do a phase when you don't know when you're gonna get supplies?
And we also don't know, we don't know what the circumstances are gonna be in 2.5 months. I mean, you know, we could see cases increase, we could see, you know, a vaccine, we don't know. So I don't wanna set false expectations that we are going to go to a hybrid model or to a green model after the first marking period, because there's still a lot of unknowns and we have to be monitoring that very closely in order to make the right decision for our community.
I don't think Dr. Gooden said that we were going to go to yellow. He just that we would consider it.
Right. I think it's the intention. I think the plan is to continue to evaluate the metrics, the availability of the PPE, the availability of pulling all of the pieces together in the hopes or with the intention of being able to go that direction. Should those items all fall into place? Should they not, then we can't. But
are we good? Did you take into consideration, Dr. Gooden, the possibility of moving back the start of the school year and using some of those in-service days, moving them forward for the teacher training?
We sent you out sample calendars. But I just want to go back to Mr. Jackson's assertion.
Dr. Gooden, all due respect, I'm just asking a question.
I know.
Because the way it was presented.
But I don't want to, I don't not answer.
I respect it. The way it's presented is we have not purchased that predecessor, which will allow the building to open, which becomes a successor. So my question was, when did we find that out? That's all.
Well, I know that Mr. Hunter has been working with the vendors. I know it came to my attention today that might be a very real possibility of us not getting those supplies in. How long that's been going on, I think from my talking to Mr. Hunter, he's told me that, you know, vendors say, well, okay, well, when you place your order, you can get it in a few weeks, and but as you continue to get closer to the time, their tune is changing. They're telling us they're not going to give us a date. Am I correct, Mr. Hunter?
And that's the question that I asked about a month ago. That's the exact question I asked a month ago. I said, where are we getting the PPE? And the response I got was, oh, we got vendors lined up and ready to go. I knew that this stuff, because I buy the same stuff.
Yeah.
So I knew this stuff was not available. It's very tough to get. So now we're
the first setback that we had was the IU in the bid that went out for PPE and it fell through. So that was the first point. The information that we had talked about were cleaning supplies. Chief Boyer specifically can talk more detail about the PPE, but as far as some of the cleaning supplies, I'm still optimistic that we're going to get before school starts, if in fact we're able to release the purchase order for the cleaning supplies, the hand sanitizer, the disinfectant wipes.
I'm talking about the PPE.
So am I to understand the holdup is that we have not received the grant fund yet? So that it hasn't been deposited in our account. We're awaiting for that. We're awaiting that deposit before we submit that purchase order. Is that what I understand to be?
As of last week, that's what we had said.
That's what I just wanted to clarify with administration and. Is that what we're waiting for? Is the deposit?
Yeah.
Okay.
Place orders, yes.
Right. So everything's kind of ready to go, but it's on hold until that money hits our account. As soon as it hits the account, we hit the go button.
Yes.
Thank you.
Chief Boyer, can you comment then on obtaining the PPE or the backlog on that? And also, we're at the 27th. I think you had said you expected disbursement by the 31st. Is there an update on that?
Okay, we've had 2 contacts with BCCD. We're definitely getting the grant. Again, I don't know when they're going to cut us a check, and they haven't told me what that is. Everybody's in the same position when it comes to the grant money. We've been working on getting a bid with MCIU since March. They first turned down the first bid because it's a seller's market and no vendor would take the bids as to what we asked for that first list. And we were starting to forecast as to what the worst case scenario would be for PPE. I was asked for a second bid list they're trying to do at this point right now. It still hasn't been approved to go that route. So then it leaves us with getting it on our own. Since it's going to be federal monies involved, we have to have those protected bids, whether it's through COSARs or any of the other bidders. I've been getting a very good education from Mr. Fink on how this occurs, so we do this all right. And as literally in the last week and a half, we're looking at 35% difference in costs. So the costs are changing. It's a seller's market. I can tell you almost probably around 125 emails going out, specifically with what we need. I need it to be protected bid situation. I need to have a timeline so we can have the ETA so we can have it for day one, because we can't get cranked up unless we have all those pieces in place for our stakeholders. I've sent Mr. Fink at least 8 emails just from some of the vendors that do actually reply, because a lot of them don't reply. Either they don't have in stock what we need, or they can't give me one of those criteria, what that timeline is. So I spend a lot of my time trying to reach out with all the people that other people in my role, Norristown, North Penn, whatnot, to see if there's any ways around any of this. I've even reached out to the county. So it's frustrating.
Did you get a response from North Penn? Because that has to be influencing their opening, I would think.
Well, they're in an interesting situation because they kind of opened up the menu, and I don't know how Chris Store's going to do it. I mean, they had some stuff already pre-planned ahead of time, and they were able to get on it right away through whatever purchasing they did. And then we are all told to wait for that first bidding contract with the MCIU, and it didn't happen. So we kind of missed the window there a little bit. So for whatever the reason was. But now it's kind of like it's hog-tie time, because now it's like, yeah, we have what you want, but we're not protected bidders. So I'm working with finance again. We may have to go another route just to see what we can find out. But
let me give you a heads up on the PPE. With my business, I'm part of a large buying group.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we buy the N95 masks, we buy the Tyvek suits, we buy the respirator, mask respirators, the cartridges. Stuff that I'm getting now, I ordered 3 months ago. So I've already, every month I put orders in, and I know when I'm getting like 3 months later. And again, I'm part of a very, very much larger buying group than the MCIU. And I'm not, let me just preface with that before I start getting blasted on Facebook. I'm not trying to get any business out of Springford. I'm not recommending you buy from me. I'm not saying any of that. I'm saying.
Are you even selling?
I'm not even selling.
I thought it was going to be a substantial donation. Thank you,
I just
Mr.
wanted
Dahl.
because, but I'm just saying that I'm, with my business, part of a very large buying group. And I know how hard, and that's why I asked this question over a month ago, where are we getting this stuff? Because I know it's not out there. So if we're thinking that even if we order it now, if we get it in 2 months, that's awesome. If we get it before 2 months, that's incredible. I don't know what's better, incredible or awesome, but I mean, that's the reality of it. Unless the IU has some type of, association with some large warehouse somewhere that has this stuff. And that's why I'm really curious to know what North Penn is doing, because North Penn literally has come out and they're giving the parents, they're basically opening the schools and they're giving the parents options. They're saying you could go hybrid, or not hybrid, you could go virtual, you could go cyber. And I'm just curious, how are they doing it?
I mean, I'll reach out to Chris Store. He's their representative, does what I do there. I don't know what they're doing either, but all of us were under the impression when we put in for those first bids that those bids would be matched. And then after it wasn't, now it's, again, what you asked that first time. And you and I even discussed it a little bit. I mean, it's difficult because there's still rules to the game you got to play. I mean, obviously, if I could go out and find it anywhere, we will. We're going to get to that point where we're going to have to. So, I mean, that's my mission right now, is to get us that, at least that starting block that we're going to get covered with, that, to get us through that first, semester, is to get that done.
Well, and I appreciate that, but again, we keep going back to the PPE, and we don't have to get in discussion this evening. I think that it behooves the district over the next 2 weeks to put some type of communication out to the parents of what the curriculum enhancement's going to be, how that's going to tie into the LMS system, what the expectations are from the district from an educational standpoint, We need to talk about, put a communication out of specifically how special ed is going to be handled. We need to make sure that we reassure the parents from an IEP perspective how that's going to be handled. And again, we don't have to discuss all this tonight because that administration and we have a great staff in place that will be able to communicate the plans very appropriately. But again, I still go back to my biggest concern, besides keeping the kids safe, was the curriculum enhancement and synchronous learning.
Thank you. I think you bring up some very good points there. So, first of all, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank the community that reached out to so many of us board members. We spent a lot of time this week reading through emails, and I know I'm not the only one of the board members who took the time to read every one of them carefully. I'd also like to thank the administration for the efforts that they have put in, and not just the superintendent and the assistant superintendent, but the curriculum directors, transportation, and facilities for the recommendation also of RED. This was a lot of people voiced their opinions. It is a difficult decision. I'm grateful that as a school board member, that my responsibility is to govern and not to micromanage, and to take the advice from the administration that we've hired. And as Mr. DeBella said, we have good people working for us here to look at the logistics. I know that the conversations have centered around, first and foremost, safety, and then secondly, the importance of educating our children, because that's what we're in the business of doing. I feel confident that even though the minutia of all the plans have not been shared with us, that they are there. When I have spoken with any of the administrators, I feel that the answers that I've gotten were thorough, and if they didn't have it, they were prepared to start as soon as they got the okay on what plan we were going with. I feel that that there were no good choices in this, and I'm sorry for the families that this is not going to be the easiest option for them. And but there are some choices there. I think it was important that we got a strong cyber program, the starts of that in place. I'm familiar with Edgenuity. I'm familiar with other cyber programs, and I think that this is a good, solid offering for our students. As far as the IEPs and the 504s, we have a lot. First of all, foremost, we're guided by the laws. And as Dr. Gooden had pointed out, the laws that were different. There was a certain amount of protection in the spring, and I feel confident that our supervisors of special ed are working on this. I know that our staff, the teachers, the special ed teachers, the special ed supervisors are very interested in doing what is in the best interest of our children. We have a wide variety of needs with our students, and their main concern is to meet the needs of those children. As far as enhanced curriculum and synchronized learning and enrichment, I'm a little concerned. I've read through a lot of the plans. I've actually listened to some board meetings of other districts. Some of the plans that I have read, I'm a little concerned as an educator that they promise the sun and the stars and the moons. We're going to have synchronized learning that's going to be live streamed from the classroom, and there'll be all these choices. Teachers are heavily burdened with providing the education in class for their students, and also for the students that would be with a virtual option. I think that our curriculum and instruction admin team has some really good ideas of how to enhance the curriculum, and how to do, have kind of a blend with some synchronous perhaps, and some more personalized, more rigorous. Our teachers probably, from what I've heard, were not necessarily themselves satisfied with the spring. They really were caught off guard. We gave them the resources that we had available. Now, the ones that I've spoken with are ready to take it to the next level. Canvas will help them with that, and that they themselves also are looking to improve that connection. Many of the teachers were very upset about that personal connection with that, and they want to do that. They want to be there for their students. They love the classroom experience and the kids. So I have no doubt that the curriculum will be more enhanced, more rigorous, and more personalized. That's what our teachers do. So, and I think that I covered everything that was on my list here. But I just wanted again to thank the community members who are so passionate and spoke up. I certainly hope that those of you that have become more involved in school board meetings, our attendance is up. They're gotten very good about how to respond in Zoom with names and what agenda item. Please continue to participate in your child's education. And again, thank you to the administrative team for researching, looking into this, and making the hard recommendation.
Thank you, Dr. Wright. So back to the red recommendation, Madam President or Dr. Gooden. So as of right now, the recommendation is to go to red until right now we don't know.
Yeah, I would say that we stay with the online learning, and I just want to reiterate that we have spent about 4 months really trying to improve that whole process, just in case. I would recommend that we would stay in a virtual and be looking at what the conditions are, what's going on. I've already suggested that we continue to run our extracurricular programs. All of those factors, having teachers in school and back, bringing them back into their buildings, they're working out of their buildings. You've got extracurriculars going on. That truly is a soft opening here. We're opening very soft, and I would propose that we would really be shooting for a move into a hybrid where we're actually trying to bring students back into the school as conditions allow. And I think we would continue to be working on that plan and refining that plan should we have the opportunity to start bringing them back in.
I think we should work towards putting a plan together to bringing the students back to school.
Right.
And then whatever phases or steps or whatever, I mean, who knows? We may be able to go from red to green. I don't know. I mean, we're spending a lot of time talking about 3 months from now when we really should be focused on what next month looks like.
Let's keep the focus on what next month should look like. Let's take a vote for a modified red, a soft red opening, where the needs of our special needs, the IEPs, the 504s, are addressed in the red phase fully, where extracurriculars do continue, as this is not a state mandate, but rather the way we're choosing to open the buildings. And then we reevaluate with the different metrics and data that is available and the availability of whatever it is that we're going to need. PPE, more technology, whatever it is that we're going to need at a later time. But tonight, we focus on the red.
Colleen, may I make a comment here? Sorry. I just don't want to see or hear any false security that we're going to have a vaccine the end of this year or possibly the end of next year. I spent 36 years in drug and vaccine development and submissions to the FDA. Moderna is just now announcing today that they are ready to start phase 3, which is the final phase, in thousands of people. I want everybody to understand what that means. It's not simply vaccinating 30,000 people. To determine safety and effectiveness, each one of those people have to be followed for possibly a whole year. Just because you vaccinate, they get exposed 6 months later and they get COVID, That's not a successful vaccine. You vaccinate 30,000 people, and a third of them die because of severe side effects, failed vaccine. So I just want to make sure that people understand that's not a given. So if we say we might be safe at the end of the first quarter, depending on where we are, and this is a given, everybody knows this, on what state the disease is in. So it could be we have to wait and keep going virtual through the first whole semester, half the year. Could be all the way through to the summer. I just don't want this false security of waiting for a vaccine for a magic answer to help us out.
I don't think that's where we're really headed, though. I think that what we're saying is that we're going to reevaluate as we go along. We're going to start tonight and keep the focus tonight on voting on the administration's recommendation to go red, and we'll flush out the other movement to the other plans, the potential that happening or not happening based on what happens as we go forward.
Right.
So we're going to have to continue to evaluate that.
Right, and that's what I said. It's understood that we have to reassess at various time points through this process.
I guess I want to add, and I want to make sure we're all being thoughtful and sensitive. I know, and Dr. Gooden, I hear you, and I have struggled with this decision and kind of found myself on Team Red as well for quite some time now. But I think it's important to recognize our families who have different priorities, who are concerned about the social emotional activities for their children. And I do want to put out there, and it takes a village, and at this time it's going to take neighbors and friends and family members, and while we're in this current circumstance and we do have social distancing still as a required obligation inside and outside at different points, but we do at least have opportunities for our children to have play dates and interact with each other and have a few friends over and have a bonfire out back for our high schoolers, or there's still opportunities for that social emotional engagement and activity, and it's not perfect, and none of this is where any of us wanted to be. And I think to reiterate what Mrs. Zazowski shared earlier, I am angry because I am not a medical professional, and we are being put in a position where we have to make decisions that have potentially medical impact on our students and on our teachers and on our staff and on our community, and that's not fair. We're not medical experts, and we are trying really, really hard to make sure that we are protecting everybody within our community, especially our students and our families and our teachers and our staff. So, again, Dr. Gooden, thank you. Thank your team. Dr. Murray, I know you've worked long hours and countless nights to help continue to evolve this red phase, and certainly Chief and Mr. Hunter, and I can't see everybody, and I apologize, I left my glasses at home. But, everybody has really worked so hard. And I think that there's a lot of information, and there has been a lot of development behind the scenes that many of us may not have seen. And there is a lot of detail. There's a lot of additional information that exists that I think we will continue to see and hear about as we continue to move forward. So I know that there were a number of questions from the community earlier this evening. I know that there are going to continue to be questions, and I know communication mechanisms are in place to help make sure that whether it's a Q&A on YouTube or whether it's an email from our communications department, we're going to continue to do the best we can to communicate those models and what they look like. So again, thank you to everybody for their
Can
work.
we go back to red recommendation? Is it fair to say that when we're saying red, that every building will be closed? Is it fair to say we have 1,200 employees? what's going to happen with those employees?
Sorry, as Mr. DeBella was talking, part of what the board has been asked to consider is asking staff to come or requiring staff to come in during the day to work out of their classrooms. But that also facilitates our work with our special ed students as well.
Right. But we also have staff outside of teachers. I mean, think about this. This is a continuation of what happened in March.
Yep.
So we only got one time to get this right. So I just want to make sure that we think this through, the planning. And Madam President, it would be great if we could have meetings going forward to where we can vet and discuss and talk and make sure we have all our bases covered.
I don't see any more comment at that point. So is there a motion to approve action item A being a soft reopening in red with teachers in classrooms able to facilitate IEPs and 504 plans and allowing for extracurriculars? Is there a motion to approve that?
So moved. Second, Linda Fazzini.
Further questions or comments on that?
Yeah, I'm not comfortable putting all that all in one motion.
It's a lot of money.
I think that I think there's things that we have to discuss in there yet. I thought that I'm comfortable with opening come August school in a virtual environment, but I think that there's more detailed conversation that has to happen, as Mr. Jackson just brought up about the 1,200 employees. Again, I struggle with, I've said this before, and I'm probably going to get hate mail, but how do we shut everything down from 8 to 3, and at 3:15 we say, never mind, everything, you could go do all your extracurricular, you could do everything you want to do, and then 8 o'clock the next morning we lock everything down again. I really struggle with that. We're contradicting what our whole intentions are, and because I struggle with the whole thing when I see all the activities that are occurring over the summer, all the travel sports, all of the, parents running their kids to Delaware, New Jersey, everywhere for all kind of events, and all the pool parties, and all of the, we want to have a prom party at our house, so we invite a bunch of students over. I mean, so we're kind of like, we're like all over the spectrum. And so we're sitting there saying we can't provide choice to the students between 8 and 3, but at 3 o'clock they could go and do whatever, extracurricular wise. I mean, it's just a big contradiction, and I'm just sorry, I'm not sure I can support all of that within the motion.
I recognize that, so let's potentially, John, would we be able to amend that motion?
Sorry, yes. You could amend the motion, but is discussion done on that somebody needs to move to amend the motion, second amendment of the motion, and vote on that second.
I just want to amend the motion that we approve with the school district opening for August or 2021 school year in the red phase. And then there has to be follow-up motions on what we're doing with staff and extracurricular and the staff that's not going to be coming back to school. I mean, there's a lot going on there than just saying it's a soft open. I guess I made a comment within my motion. Sorry.
No, that's fine. I just think just so you know what you're.
I was trying to clarify.
No, I know, and that's fine. I'm just trying to make sure. So what is in the motion? Let's just say it that way. Motion is.
The motion I'm opening is opening up school
in red.
In the red
So
phase.
I withdraw my motion. How's that?
Okay, that's fine. And so then that's motion to be seconded. But what does that not? That just includes opening in red, not the full plan and all the other issues.
We'll continue
Correct.
to vet those issues
Okay.
out. At this point, to give direction to the administration, the district, the teachers, the parents, to give direction, we need to approve something. So we're going to approve the red, possibly, and then we will have to flush out those other items.
So basically, we're giving the parents a choice of cyber or virtual come August.
That's correct. So with Tom amending that,
Her motion's
do we
withdrawn,
have
so you just need,
do
you
we
need his
have
vote.
a second?
Yeah, you just need his motion second.
Right.
So you just,
So I need a second on Tom's
Second.
amended. Any more questions or comments at that point on the amended motion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. We will start in the red phase. Moving on to personnel.
Wait a minute.
Something else you want to add there?
Well, what do we do? What are we doing with everything else? I mean,
Are we going to decide that tonight about the teachers, the extracurriculars, the IEPs, the 504s?
well, we can wait till September. I don't know. I mean,
Well, Clinton wants to meet every Monday night.
Clinton just said.
We need to be meeting every Monday night, so we're not in this position come the end of August.
So it makes sense to be able to get kind of a list together of some of the things we want to address and then have them bring them forward for another vote.
Keep in mind, this is a continuation for March, so that list should already be there.
Well, it's not exactly a continuation of March. So we're talking about things like extracurricular activities. There are health plans in place for those. The plan that the marching band has in place, the plan that the athletics have in place, which limit the number of people who can gather, talk about, the required PPE. So it's, so that looks different because in the spring, everything was shut down completely. There are, I think, some other options that we might have that I don't know the specifics of it, but I believe that there was discussion still of maybe having some of our most vulnerable special ed still be met personally with those. I don't know if that's part of the plan. And then also the offices, perhaps things can be opened because the building won't be, the governor shut the building down in the spring. Now our building won't be completely shut down. So our registrar can be in the building, things like that. So it's different than it was in the spring.
I agree fully that it's different than it was in the spring. And also, now that we're giving the direction to the administration and the district to go full steam ahead and make the planning for the red phase, I believe that these issues and others will be ones that they will be working on even in the next week, and then we meet again. If we start talking about those, we're taking the focus off what we said we would do tonight, number one, and number two, we are just hypothesizing based on the fact that the administration needs this next week, now that they have direction, to address these specific areas. So I propose that we do not address them and that we move on with personnel.
okay, but 15 minutes ago, we had a motion on the table that we're going to approve everything, and then I stopped it, and I said I want to focus on one motion at a time.
And we agreed with you.
Right, and then we just. So, but we're not going to. No, what I said was the motion was going to focus on, and then we would have additional motions.
You didn't say we'd have those
Yes,
additional
I did.
motions tonight.
I did. Well, sorry, I didn't say tonight. So we don't want to give. So
Tom, I completely agree with you, and I would like to move that we that within the red phase that we give administration the opportunity to develop a plan for our IEP, GIEP, special ed students and others to come into the building for some portion of time in order to receive appropriate services under their 504. I'm sorry, in our 504s, so that they're receiving any appropriate services or supports that they may need.
Can I ask a quick question? If we're heading towards a soft red opening, do we have enough PPE for the staff and the teachers to be in the buildings? Are we covered there?
I'm getting the thumbs up from my two individuals on the green plan.
Great, thank you.
That's why I asked the question, would the buildings be shut down completely? Because that's my question.
Now, we wouldn't shut down we're planning to bring staff in, let them work out of their rooms. We're still looking at servicing our special needs population. So those things, we have that latitude because we're not under a state ordered shutdown. We have some flexibility there. Remember that as far as extracurriculars, I do want to comment that we are able to, not only do we have these plans in place, we also have kids practicing, teams are practicing right now, and they are, for the most part, at least in the fall, outside. And so, it's happening now, but we're not dealing with the concentrations of having, 250 staff in the high school and 300 kids. You don't have those kind of concentrations in your extracurricular realms.
Okay, but let me just, first off, the seasons did not officially start. So whatever's going on right now is all volunteer, first off. Second off, we just saw, and somebody referred to it earlier, where there was like 14 of the Marlins baseball players that have been tested positive for COVID. So we don't know once all these things get full going officially in the district, what impacts they may or may not have. We already know up in a neighboring school district, that there was a player that tested positive, that they had to shut a sport down for 2 weeks. We already know that there was a coach in a youth sports that was tested positive, and they had to shut that down. Although that coach would not give up any contact tracing information, so they were not really sure what the impacts were. So I think that for us to sit here tonight and say that these extracurricular have been underway is a false statement, because whatever's going on is all voluntary, and I don't know if they have the full teams, the full anything, because the stuff does not officially start until the second week of August. There's somewhere around there, somewhere around the second week of August.
I don't know if Mickey McDaniels is available, if he's on the call or not, but I think that we follow the PIAA, the Department of Health, and the CDC guidelines. And if we need to get sports shut down, I think that's done at the county level or within the organization. And it is a concern because I happen to work in a district in which there was a player that had, but there's the, and there is a lot of talk that goes on in background. That's a lot of planning, preparation. There's a lot of concern for the well-being of students to allow them to participate in these sports, but only within as safe as it is. So
with regards to the desire to add items to our agenda tonight, now that we have sort of a strategic direction, I mean, there's a multitude of questions that I think we all have. Would it not make sense, just as a suggestion, that we compile our questions, organize them, and then provide those to administration so that they can begin to work on them versus sort of just randomly throwing out things that we may or may not have given them enough time to adequately prepare. So that would be my suggestion, just to try to make good usage of everyone's time. Also from a desire to meet every week perspective. So we're talking about 8/3, which would be next Monday, and then 8/10, because we have a scheduled work session on the 17th already. And so if we were to give administration a listing of our questions, that could direct information and or presentations for the following 2 extra board meetings. Now that we don't necessarily need to spend great time debating on what particular color we're opening with, right?
I agree with you, and I also think that now that we're giving direction, that perhaps some of the questions that we even come up with will be answered as they go ahead and logistically plan for how this will roll out. maybe not all of them. We'll still have plenty, but we can add those and share those and vet those out in the next several meetings that we'll have.
I am only suggesting that we meet so we don't end up like we did before. That's my only reason.
I would disagree that we ended up in a bad space. This is a bad space for everybody, not only in Springford, but also in the county, in the state, in the nation, and globally. This is a crisis situation that we've dealt hard. I guess it's just a horrible situation we've been dealt, and we're doing our best to get through it. We have been meeting pretty regularly since our last meeting, June 25th, and we're doing our best, and administration is doing their best, coming together now. We've just given direction to the district and to our parents and saying, hey, this is where we're at. Not all the school districts have done that. There are still districts out there that are saying, we're gonna wait a couple more weeks. We're gonna wait and see what happens. We've done at least that. And as I said in the beginning, you may not support the decision. I understand that. No choice is a good choice. Every choice is imperfect. You may not support it, but I ask you to respect the fact that the decision has been made.
Mrs. Zazowski, I just ask that we address our special needs students before we close out and move on. I think that it's really important that we make sure that appropriate direction is given and that, again, our community members who have students who may have special needs and special services have some inkling of where we're looking and where we're going with that program. So I do request that we have appropriate direction this evening before we move on to personnel.
Madam President, it wasn't a criticism, it was just an observation.
I disagree. Mr. Rizzo, did you want to weigh in on the IEP, which I'm entitled to do? Do you want to weigh in on the IEPs and the 504s?
Wait a minute, we're all over the place here. Who's bringing up, I mean, what are we doing?
So I thought there was a motion, but
There was, I mean, like
but there has not yet been a second, and then we moved on to
So Christina, you're making a motion to
started.
refresh us on it.
Thank you. How do you want to phrase, Dr. Gooden? Move to provide administration with the latitude to move forward with this special ed, with our special needs programs, including those for our GIEPs, to make sure that the needs of our students can be met both on site in buildings as well as remotely, as appropriate.
Is there a second?
I don't know how to, there's probably a more eloquent way to say it. So if anybody has that,
I think we get.
Yeah, I'm a little bit confused about the question, about the proposal, because I'm concerned about whether you are saying that we should be, that any student with an IEP should be allowed to be able to enter the building for additional services, or just that we are going to put an emphasis on meeting the needs of our students, of our IEP
it's
students.
giving administration the ability to develop that plan appropriately for each of our students, whatever that plan may be. It's going to look different for each student. Their plans are different. So as they continue to evolve the program, but one of the options that they may have is to have a child in the building, although we're in the red phase. So to kind of have that exception as needed for different students and for different plans to meet their needs.
Okay, I didn't know that we would need to vote on that. I thought that that would be done. So
I do have a question of procedure, like, or would we then, that's important, there's no question, right? I'd love to see that, but do we then need to make a motion for administration to put forth a plan that best adequately utilizes our faculty for opening up in the red? I mean, these are all important things. These are, but are we gonna have to make a motion for each one of these?
I think to the extent that it's different than what has been presented previously, I would say we would. And John, is that correct?
Yes, that's why I asked the question before. I believe you've just basically voted on red. Then you're going to have to break out what the administration had been recommending, both on the 504 special ed, and then faculty in the building as well. Break that out. And the question was whether those are going to be done tonight or next Monday. But I think you have the right to make the motion tonight on that issue.
I mean, the important, you're hitting on it, right? The important thing is if we're opening in the red phase and we're doing virtual learning, but there are students in the district currently who have special ed, special needs, IEPs, or whatever, that specifically will require, or should require, I won't say will, I don't like that, but should require them to have services within the buildings. And for that to occur, we need, I believe, and I could be wrong, but I believe we would have to make a motion to allow the administration to make that happen. If we're closing the school, but we still have to give them the leeway to, and if I'm understanding this the right way, right?
Yeah.
We have to give the leeway to say, yes, there is a case of students that will require services within the buildings. So we don't have to list them all out. We'll just say there are students that will require services within the buildings.
So again, because I think you did the red plan just generically, then the motion, as I understand it, was giving the administration the discretion to basically allow the use of the building when the individual plan for whatever student is so warrants. And so that it's not saying everybody gets access to the building, not saying nobody gets access to the building. It says it's leaving it up to the administration. But effectively, you will not be like you were by the original order, closed with nobody getting access unless it was to make sure that, you know, the pipes weren't freezing in the first thing, in the first.
So it's basically exception voting. We're basically voting on exceptions. So we have a rule, which is the buildings are closed and everybody's virtual, and then we have certain exceptions. However, in this case, and those are the exceptions that we would be voting on, Mr. Schaefer, as I get it.
Maggie and Schaefer, does that provide the clarity that, I know, sorry, it's stuck. Does that provide the clarity?
No.
I'm sorry, Dr. Wright and Mr. Schaefer, does that provide the clarity that you're looking for on that motion?
It did sound right. My concern is to make sure that we're giving the administration the authority to, at their discretion, what they feel that need. Yes, thank you.
Madam President, will there have to be a health safety plan approved for that?
We already have a plan for that. If we bring kids in special ed, that they're going to follow the same social distancing protocols and the wiping down. We had that in place. Mr. Rizzo, and he's been sitting over there. He works closely with the special ed plan, with the special ed supervisors. And I don't want anybody in hearing think that we haven't addressed this in our planning, that we've kind of just forgotten about special ed. We know it's there. We have been working with our special ed supervisors to develop plans. What we really needed from the board is some direction on what direction we were going to go. Mr. Rizzo, can you speak to that real quick?
Sure, absolutely. And contrary to maybe the message that was sent or the community received, since March 13th, our special ed supervisors have been working on what reopening could look like. Whether it be in 2 weeks, in 2 months, or in August, whatever that might end up being. So all of our special education supervisors are serving on one of the red committees or more than one, or one of the committees or more than one of the committees. They've been meeting regularly with their teams and planning for what some sort of reopening could look like. Excuse me. And we have been very closely considering all of our options. What this will do is allow us to really go much deeper. Now that you've made a decision that we're going into red, much deeper dive into what we can actually provide now that we have some direction on that. We have gone very far with each of the phases, but now we're going to triage and talk about what red looks like, go deeper into what yellow looks like. But generally speaking, it's very difficult to compare March 13th to where we are right now. I said we're triaging. We're going to start with red. Once we have that fully vetted, then we move on to yellow. But we got to firmly hammer out red. All I'm suggesting is that in the time that we have, we're going to triage so we can be working ahead and not being reactive. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So I would just say it's very difficult to compare to what red was in March to what it is now, because we have options. We have menus. We have menus of options for our families. We can provide in-home services. We can provide, with this motion, in-person services. We can provide teletherapy. Not only do we have more tools at our disposal, but we have more ability on those tools our teachers have been more trained and they're more comfortable with different means of delivering services. So we are in a much better place. And of course, I cannot negate the fact that we can't just blanket say, if you have an IEP, you're coming into school, because it really need drives services. So that decision has to be made at the IEP level, or at least a discussion with the case manager, the special ed supervisor, the building principal, et cetera. So there's a lot of discussions that have been going on, but they're very individualized. As you know, the special education programming is very individualized. We want to make sure that we do our due diligence for all students at all levels. That's the quickest thing anyway.
Thank you for that. Okay, so with that focus then, and with that motion that Christina had put forth and clarified, is there a second for that?
I second.
Any more questions or comments? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Oh, I believe that motion carries at this point also.
So then I have one quick question for Dr. Gooden. Is it to the districts, does it make sense from a district standpoint that we know if we want the teachers to come back? Is that something you would like to decide it tonight, or is that something that you are okay with pushing off for another week?
I think our staff would like to know that.
I'm not talking about all the staff. I'm just talking about the
teachers,
professional staff.
I mean, teachers, yeah. I think that they would like to know what the expectation of the board is.
Hey,
Well-
is there a motion?
Well, I'd like to make a motion to hear from administration on what's their readiness for the faculty, right? And that includes from a technology perspective and also their well-being. And what would be any additional costs associated with any recommendations per that. And because again, it appears we're just going to dive into a couple of these. And so there's my motion.
But is the motion just, are you just asking them to report? I mean, someone can move on what was in the red plan is to bring in teachers back. Somebody can second that, and then you can ask for the administration to explain what their plan is. And I think just what you added, ask them in the comment period, how they were addressing those issues. That makes sense?
So is there a motion in the red plan for the teachers to be in the classroom?
I thought that.
So I'd like to know the full plan. I mean, whether they're in the building or not in the building, to me, is sort of a part of a bigger plan. And so just by saying, let's send them back into school, I'm not sure what that does. That's a piece of the conversation for sure. But I think there are more important things in terms of what I think should be the focus as to whether or not they're in school or out of school. We know kids are not going to be in school. Now it's like, well, what are we doing to get the teachers ready? You know, that's my opinion.
So, John, would it be appropriate for Dr. Gooden to elaborate at this time on some of the questions that Mr. Schaefer raised?
I mean, and that's the board's prerogative. That's fine. And I apologize. I don't know exactly what your red plan said with respect to teachers in or out of the school, but if that was addressed in the plan, you just or what your proposal is, considering the board has now said generically the red plan.
So if we don't have let me try to, if we don't have a motion about bringing the teachers back into the building as of yet, then if we are going to meet next Monday, which I believe some of us strongly suggest, then I would hope we don't need a summary of the 3 plans again. So good. So then I think that we could start the meeting off with, this is what our strategy is for getting the teachers back into the classrooms for August.
Fair enough.
And what that would include, you know, PPE, technology, whatever, you know what I mean, the full gamut.
I agree. I don't think we need to have a motion.
Our plan.
Well, that also gives us an opportunity for me to pull my team together, talk about the pros and cons of what we would propose. Because in talking very briefly with our HR director today, there are some situations in which we would have to make accommodations for. We'd have no choice. So we need to vet those out. So if we are going to have another meeting next Monday, that gives us a few days to pull this together.
One more question about the red plan. Has there been any discussions with the union about this?
I have spoken with the association president, yes.
So this won't be a long, drawn-out conversation if there's been previous talk? Okay.
No.
Thank you.
With that, we're going to move on to personnel. Is there a motion to approve A and B?
Separate B.
Is there a motion to approve A? Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. B, is there a motion to approve B, personnel B?
So moved.
Is there a second? There is a second. Any questions or comments on B?
Is there a way that we could break this out instead of the 2021 entire school year where we just focus on fall?
And full year.
Pardon me?
Fall and full year. So some of our contracts begin in the beginning of the year, a month, or just straight through the year. If you look at the, right.
What would be the purpose behind that?
Because I don't know what's going to happen in 2 months from now. Stay. I'm not willing to be put in a situation that we were put in last year.
Do we have any other safeguards in place? I know that we had talked before about having it so that if we weren't in school or if an activity didn't take place, that we did not have to pay. I know that was part of the concern, was that we, like every district in Pennsylvania, we ended up having to pay for activities and sports in the spring that did not take place or barely took place. And so we're trying to avoid that. So I don't know if Dr. Gooden, if we had talked about that or about that safeguard.
There was discussions with Mr. Fitzgerald, and the language so reflects that in here. However, in order to do this, you would have to open up the contracts.
I think if I remember correctly, Mr. Fitzgerald had advised us that really the when we approve this, then that's kind of a guaranteed income for that individual. And so the way the state had worded the legislation, it said that they were to be made whole. Well, we had previously approved, same kind of thing here. If we approve everybody for the full year, depending on the wording of legislation, we could be left in that same position. So we, I think, just want to make sure that we are being prudent with when we make those approvals.
So to make sure I'm understanding correctly, what the board is asking is to approve just the fall contracts and the full year contracts.
Christina, can you clarify the full year piece? Are you talking the calendar year or the school year? If you're saying the school year, that's how I appear it to be. That's how it's written.
So if you actually look at extracurricular contracts, the attachment, there are some, it has the title of the position, the contract title. It has the season, last name, first name, and stipend. Under season, if you look through, you'll see summer, spring, summer, fall, summer, year. The ones that are for the year, for example, reading Olympics would begin in September or October, and that goes throughout the entire school year. So that's a single contract for that whole year. If we defer that, then that individual is not in place for the beginning of the year.
I hear what you're saying. I was looking at it as if, well, if we're saying full year, we're including the spring anyway.
No,
I was just
full year contracts and fall contracts.
So I don't even know how some of these are going to be even pulled off.
So can I make a
I mean,
suggestion? Because if you are meeting next Monday, and this takes some analysis of the CBA to make sure that the analysis would have been different in March because there was legislation that specifically said you had to pay what they otherwise would have received. That's why that legal interpretation was given. That may not apply going forward. I'm not familiar exactly what your CBA says on this. I would recommend you move this to next Monday, and then Mark can take a closer look at this specific issue and the concern you have, because I think it's a valid concern because, you know, you have safety patrol officers that are not going to, that's just one I saw, which is an annual situation. If you're going red and you're never coming out of red, not that we want that, but that would mean that that process would, you know, there wouldn't be a need for a lot of these extracurriculars, if that's what we're calling it.
If we do, if we do make that decision to postpone it next week, I do want to note, with respect for the employees that are the people that are doing these positions, because by not approving it, they're anticipating it. I just wanted to say that taking on these responsibilities, it's really good. We couldn't operate all these extracurricular and sports without these coaches and these people that do this. So if we are going to defer it for another week, I just would like them to know that it's that we respect the commitment that they do make to our district to fill these positions. So it's not that.
But I think we need Mark's lens on this before we can approve this. So do we need to make a motion to table it, to table B? Permission to table B.
There's a lot of analysis that has to be on here because there's stuff on here, fall intramurals. Well, if the buildings are closed, then how do we do fall intramurals?
And then there's some that just say contract number 22.
Right.
So, why are we paying somebody for number 22? What is that?
So what I am concerned about is that there are a few fall sports that are starting in the next week, and that Mickey's no, heat acclimation starts the first week of August. So I guess we could push it off one more week. I think what we need to do is take this list and it has to be broken into sub lists. And I think that there are specific fall activities that should be voted on, and then there's others that we'll have to have further conversation, like fall intramurals and different things. If the buildings are closed, then those aren't actually going to happen. So it goes a little bit further than just saying fall and year, because it's just not, we have to break it down a little further.
So Dr. Gooden, could we have that information so we could vote on it next week? Would someone from your staff be able to differentiate or to some of the information there?
And make sure I'm sure what's being asked. You're looking for the approvals next week of that which needs to be approved for us to move forward in the fall.
That aren't building related.
With the understanding that you wouldn't want to put things in there that would require all the students to be in school.
Yes.
Yes, and I think, as Tom just said, not building related, so outside at this point. And perhaps we should look at the others as well, but have serious doubts if the buildings are technically closed. So, what are they?
Since we don't have anything there, we don't know what we're approving these individuals for, so that's a challenge.
Remember that one of the things the board did a few years ago is you created a situation where when you have a club that's been running in a school and suddenly there's no interest in that club anymore, instead of having to come back and get a new club approved that kids are interested in, we just numbered those, and the building's able to, you know, if they don't want to run it, if there's no interest in a chess club, but they want to do a ping pong club, I don't know, then we're able to do that without getting approved.
And that's fine, but at least on this, when we're approving the money, don't let us know what it's being used for, because right now it just says club something, and so we don't know. Is it ping pong club? Is it chess club? Is it hockey club? Is it, we don't know. So just to give us that information. Thank you.
So we've asked the administration for direction on breaking down the extracurriculars for us, and we had a motion for this. Is the motion rescinded and we table it, or is there a motion to push it to table it to next week?
Motion to table.
Do we have a second for that?
So moved. No second, sorry. Yeah, that.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. That motion does carry.
I'd just like to comment, the reason for my opposition to that is that there's language in there that gives our administration the right to prorate or not pay stipends in the event of a school closure. So to me, this is massive micromanagement.
That language doesn't hold true. That's what we were talking about earlier. Right,
That was the direction that Mark Fitzgerald
Mark
had given
said.
us previously. He said he puts it there because it's good to have, but that it likely won't stand up.
Oh, he said it wouldn't hold any weight. He said we could have it there, but it won't hold any weight. I think we should go right out of the gate with finance and take them separately, because I anticipate that they're all going to be separated anyway. So with that, finance, A, is there a motion to approve A?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Questions or comments?
One comment I have is that we talked about this last week.
Mike.
I say I was doing that last week too.
I know.
We talked about this last week. It's hard for me, I won't speak for the rest of the board, but it's hard for me to approve a motion when it refers to an exhibit in an agreement.
Any other comments or questions on A?
I think this was the one that I spoke about, and Mr. Fitzgerald said he had not looked at the contract.
No, he did look at this contract. He did review the contract. It was the campus one that he hadn't looked at yet.
Okay.
This one was reviewed. This one we had an issue last week because the cost structure wasn't explicit enough. To Mr. DeBello's point, it's a little more clear this time because I only referred to Exhibit A last time. Instead, this time I put in the actual costs.
Good. I think I had asked about was the 1,500 all in, and that started the conversation. So the $50,000, that's all in.
That's a 70.
It's $70,865, and that would be a not to exceed amount.
Okay. So we're talking about item A, correct? Item A says a total shall not exceed $49,000.
There was an updated version that was out this afternoon. There was an email that came out that said this item, and there's another item that was also updated. This was updated. You have the probably the agenda prior to that.
So it jumped more than I thought. So this $70,000 is all in, no exclusions, nothing else.
That is correct. Well, the costs that are listed in the motion are referenced in Exhibit A, but you're correct.
So I don't know anything about the Seneca Valley option. So just a question. I've heard a number of folks who have expressed concern about it. I know one of the things that was concerning was the option for advanced placement courses, and do we have a solution for that? So that's one question. Also, have we looked at the option through the MCIU? And those were my two questions for you. So,
Mr. Catalano, Dr. Murray and I looked at that a few months ago. We went to a presentation that was there, and we found that this was a little bit more robust, and that's a little more costly. But yes, we did investigate that.
okay, thank you. And what about, is there a solution then for the AP issue and how we're going to address students? Because again, we're in a situation where students may end up kind of taking the cyber option, but they were enrolled in AP courses.
Sure. So the answer to that is there are 13 courses that are offered AP through Edgenuity. There are some other options. We have VHS, Virtual High School, where we have some seats that we can put students in there. We have the possibility of, as we're creating courses, since we're going to be in the red, students or teachers that are teaching AP courses could build that, and those students could have access to those courses, possibly on a year-round basis, or as long as they're going to be in the cyber environment. And then the last option is, last week it was illuminated that we ended up paying a $16,000 fee for VLN. They have other courses that we could do on a per course, per student basis if we choose to go that direction.
I want to thank Mr. Rizzo too. He did the presentation, I think it was Wednesday night, that he did that, where he did a presentation specifically on cyber. I believe you had quite a crowd, quite an audience that was in attendance on that Zoom meeting, and really talked about the particulars of the cyber option. Was able to field a lot of questions. I know there were some questions that did not get answered. Was that Q&A sheet was that put out?
So there were 500 questions on the Q&A sheet, so we're working through those. We went through and looked at all the ones that were not already answered in the FAQ that we put out on the website. We have also been responding to emails, significant numbers of emails, because we did say, if you have a specific about your child, don't put it out here in public, reach out to us separately, and they've been doing that, so we've been responding to parents pretty regularly. That sheet with 500 questions, we're going to have out here by the end of the week. I did ask for some patience because it was fairly significant.
And that'll be posted on the website, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then one clarification for this agenda item. 1,001 to 2,500 seats, or what is the max amount we could have under this umbrella?
So, and again, I mentioned this last week, the seat is a concurrent license, so we can't have more than that many people at one time. So at the same time, we could have 1,001 to 2,500 students on the platform. That's what that means. So we could go to the maximum, and we could have an unlimited number of seats for an additional cost, but we don't believe we need to go that direction for the incurred expense.
We had a first and a second, I believe, on that. Is that correct, Mrs. Fern? Okay.
Can I just
Any other comments?
Just one more clarifying question. So when we talked about and I apologize, it's late in the day, with our AP classes and other options for our students if they want to take Mandarin or other courses. So would those be additional expenses to what is laid out here? Just for my own.
It would fit within the price structure, but to your point, we would only offer courses that the curriculum has already been approved by Springford. So if there's a course on Edgenuity that Springford doesn't have, we would not be able to use that course because, again, I mentioned before that we want to align with our curriculum. So we take their content and align it with our curriculum.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Okay, moving on to Finance B. Is there a motion to approve Finance B?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Questions or comments?
Last week that we discussed the 1,500 Chromebooks, and there was no discussion of license. So what happened between last Monday and Sunday to the tune of $36,000? I'm just trying to understand. By now we should know. You come to the board with all of your information, all of your financial requests, because we talked about the purchase of 1,500 last week. No discussion of license. Now the discussion of licensing to the tune of 36. Can I finish?
Excuse me, sorry.
Just to the tune of $36,000. That's all.
These are different machines. The 1,500 bought last week was for cyber and the kids that filled out the survey that needed the machines. These are machines to go to the 7th and 8th grade kids that will give every kid 7 to 12 a machine. This is just for 7th and 8th grade laptops to go home to the kids in 7th and 8th grade. The 1,500 last week were different machines.
I understand this is to convert our, we own the laptops, but these licenses allow us to convert those laptops to Chromebooks?
Correct. The machines were bought for on-premise use. Converting them to Chromebooks significantly lowers the cost for them to be remote for antivirus, malware, and remote management. If we kept them as Windows devices, it'd be twice as much money to convert them to remote access.
All in favor of Finance B, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Finance C, is there a motion? Also a licensing issue.
So moved.
Second.
Is there a second? Second, Wendy? Questions or comments on C?
$1 a license? Really? And that's through a state contract.
This is a site license for Cloud Ready. It goes with the 1,500 Chromebooks. If we did it per student, it was $30 per student. To do a site license was cheaper, so we had to do 8,000 students at $1 per.
And Bob, that's for a year, that's for 3 years. What coverage is that?
That's the life of the device.
Okay.
Thank you.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Finance D. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
And a second? Questions or comments? Oh, we don't have a second. Sorry about that.
Second.
Jump the gun. Christina, did you say, or Diane? Wendy. Wendy said second. Okay. Questions or comments on D?
Just a question more than anything. Is this precedent? Like, do we always buy the cases for our? Okay.
And that cost wasn't previously included. And why not? If, as Mr. Schaefer said, we always buy them, and this time we did not for some given reason.
The 7th and 8th grade devices were not being taken home. They were just in the building.
So at that point, you wouldn't have purchased the cases, but the ones that were deployed last year and the ones that are being deployed this year do in fact have the cases for their own protection. All in favor of D, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Any opposed? That motion carries. Finance E,
So moved.
and a second. Questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? F. Is there a motion to approve Finance F? Regarding the purchase of face masks for students.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments?
Doesn't that number need to be reevaluated since we're not opening in the first quarter?
The total, yes.
Well, the total shall not exceed per quarter. John, could we have a little direction on that since it
Yeah, I mean, if
says
it's-
shall
if-
not exceed? Does that cover
So
us since we're not going to be in the first quarter?
So it's per quarter. That's the administration would be authorized to purchase up to 62,500 per quarter. Doesn't mean they need to purchase that much. Again, I don't know what their circumstances are and how the lots are they're purchasing, but it would only be, you're only approving it up to 250 for the whole year and 62.5 for each quarter. But if there's no school in the first quarter, they would undoubtedly use those masks in the second quarter, and then you would, you wouldn't need to purchase the fourth quarter's masks.
Or may need them for some special needs should any of those students at some point come in?
We have a supply currently, just not enough. We have enough to cover approximately about 3,200 masks right now.
So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that motion carries. And Finance G.
Will
Is
that
there-
estimate change because this is not?
Well, let's
up
do the
to-
motion and then we'll go to
Okay.
questions. Is there a
Okay.
motion to approve G?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Questions or comments? Now, Diane, did you?
Okay, sorry. Because this is not a figure up to or not to exceed. So how much, if we're not gonna open for the first marking period or quarter, will this significantly change?
These are hourly rates here, and we're going to use them as needed. So if we don't use any cleaners, obviously there's going to be no cost. We're approving the expenditure up to.
The first cent, I know it's buried or it's upfront, not next to the dollar amount. But if you look at the 7,200, it's up to 7,200 hours. So you're basically authorizing the administration up to 7,200 hours. If it means you don't need to do as much cleaning because the school is all or partially closed, then they would not have people cleaning. But again, based on what you've already said about special ed, you're going to still have some classes that are going to be required to be cleaned, even in red.
And it does say further down in that item, will only be added as needed, as I think Mr. Hunter was referring to. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Moving on to H. Is there a motion to approve H, Finance H?
So moved. Second.
Questions or comments?
This cost, as written, is projected for the first quarter of the new year. I think based on school being open. School is not gonna be open. So I mean, that number should be revisited.
Or deferred for second quarter. I think we should defer it.
I want to make a motion we table this.
Second.
Any questions or comments on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any opposed? Finance, aye.
Table, please. It's
Um,
also for
no.
first quarter.
I think that, is there a motion?
Are you making a motion to?
No, there is no motion, so I'm asking for it to be tabled.
Well, I think that we have to look at this one different because with the possibility of our one motion earlier about having certain kids that may have to be in the school, is some portion of that number required for the first quarter? Maybe we just have to revisit that and vote on it next week.
In addition to that, the language is in here will only be added as needed.
I don't know who's writing this, but
I think that same rationale applies to age because you could have substitute for special ed. You could have substitutes that are needed if you're going to have the teachers in the building. So you may want to take HN. If you're going to do I, then do HNI next week again, based on what the administration needs to come back, I think, and tell you guys, because you potentially, even in the circumstance you got the red with people in the building, you may still need subs and you may still need.
But we already have
we have a
substitutes.
substitute
We already
plan.
have a budget for substitutes.
Okay.
This is above and beyond what was previously budgeted last year when we passed our budget for this upcoming school year. So since we're not going to be in session, those that we have already budgeted for the first semester should be sufficient.
I do think we asked administration to come back and talk to us about teachers in person, and we've tabled a couple of things, but we just tabled the additional substitute cost. I think we table it till the nursing.
Christine, can you turn on your mic?
Sorry, thank you. So we wouldn't need the substitutes for the first marking period, so that can be deferred to a later date. But Mr. DeMello had suggested maybe we ask the administration to reevaluate I to see if there's a potential that we might need a couple substitutes in there. And that could be brought back next week.
Are all good with tabling that then I till next week? Okay, going to J. Is there a motion for J?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Sorry, Linda. Did you say aye? Did you say aye?
I did.
Okay, thank you. Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Other business. Is there a motion for A?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Moving on to board comment. Any more board comment?
I have two comments. One is that I am very concerned over last week and this week with all of the unbudgeted line items, especially the ones that were taken from the unassigned fund balance. That's money that needs to be made up at some point. So I think that when we have our finance committee meeting in August or September, whenever our first meeting is, I think it's August, we're going to have to do analysis on all this and report back to the board, because there's going to be significant impacts next year as far as spending is concerned. and we may possibly come back to the board with some recommendations as far as what we don't spend money on this year, as far as what's already in the budget that we would have to revisit. So, because we're talking between, well, we kind of tabled H&I for now, but if we would have voted on H&I, tonight alone was over $800,000. And last week, I believe, was over $1 million. So, so these are significant numbers, and we're going to have to do analysis, and we will be coming back with a report after the finance committee. This will be a big topic item. And the second thing is that I will, and again, this is not to be viewed as a negative towards anyone. The administration worked extremely hard. All of the staff worked extremely hard to get us to some point. I'm trying to grasp why some school districts, and Souderton just recently, I think earlier this evening, did the same thing. They're opening with options for parents, and I'm just curious to how their school districts are able to do this, and we're not able to bridge that in some fashion. I mean, there could be arguments made for every phase or every one of those red, yellow, or green. We know that. We've heard, and like Dr. Wright has mentioned, or somebody mentioned, I'm sorry if I got the wrong person, but we got an enormous number of emails and from parents. I know I was contacted directly by parents that I know, and you know, for every parent that wanted red, there was a parent that wanted green. For every parent that thought they wanted green, they were okay with yellow. I mean, it was just, it was all over the place. But there are school districts that are, and I'm not debating if it's right, wrong, or indifferent, but I'm just trying to understand and wrap my arms around how there are school districts in our backyard that are able to open their buildings, get their kids back in school, and they're giving parents options. And we are pretty far from that. And that's just something to ponder, and for something for us to think about, because I think ultimately our goal, and I know there's going to be a lot of things dependent, I'm just saying ultimately our goal is to get the kids back in school, because there's so many positives that are associated with that. I'm not saying that we jeopardize safety. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying that our goal has to be moving towards getting the kids back in school. And again, I'll close with that. Other districts are doing it. I know Souderton's doing it. North Penn's doing it. I believe O&J's doing it. I mean, there's schools that are opening up and they're giving parents options.
There are, unfortunately, I think our options after tonight. And I would agree with you. There are other options that are happening. The options we're giving are red or cyber, and it's not ideal. And I said that out of the gate. I certainly haven't been in the red camp for long, and I don't want to stay here. And I hope that I made that very clear in my opening statement, that I know and realize the importance also, and share that same sentiment of getting the kids back to school.
I wanted to address the question, I don't know, during comment, if I'm allowed to, about we had asked, Schaefer had asked the question about the calendar for next year, and the administration had very kindly come up with what it would look like if we were to bring a couple of days forward. They had a couple of different scenarios. And I know parents would need to know if we were going to do anything to changing the front end of the school year, the start date. And I don't know, I would like to know how the administration feels about the importance of being able to, now that we have a plan in place to start the school year, the importance of bringing one or two of those in-service days to the beginning of the school year, to help with professional development for teachers. Is this an appropriate time to be discussing this?
Certainly it is.
Thank you. And Dr. I'm not sure it would be you, if it would be maybe Dr. Murray even, who would be curriculum, or Mr. Rizzo. Perhaps Dr. Rockland, who is doing the handling the virtual school.
So in reference to professional development, we are going to now actively be pursuing the professional development plan that we already started to build with the implementation of Canvas. Certainly the upfront professional development time would be welcomed. I know that that has been something that our committee has discussed, and it has been something that we've supported and we can certainly use ahead of time. Within the initial plan, we did talk about potentially flexing a day and using that as a way to get some of the upfront PD. So that's definitely something that we would like to continue to do. But any of those PD days that we can get upfront would certainly be welcomed and well used.
What day is the flex day coming from?
May 18th.
So is this something that the board wants to discuss? Our administration has said that they would be welcome to be able to provide another opportunity for a professional development day or two. They had given us several different options.
John, could a motion be made at this point, and added on to this at this point during board comment, or no?
Yeah, I mean, you haven't adjourned yet, so sure.
Maggie, do you want to make a motion to do that?
I would, but I wasn't able to pull up the options, so we need someone to review the different. There were 2 or 3 different options there. What?
Let them present all of them.
Is so somebody in position that they could present the options that were shared with us?
I could discuss that with you, absolutely. So it wasn't a simple move a little bit later, end a little bit later. There were some things throughout the year that were adjusted as well. I don't know whether you want me to talk about each version or comparison between the versions. I would say it may be prudent for us to take a little bit of time and consider what the PD model should look like and pick a calendar that could best meet those needs and come back next week with a format that is and that gives you all time to look at it. But I could talk about it tonight so you have an idea if that's what you want me to do. So we came up with 3 versions. Last year, Mr. Schaefer, or last week, Mr. Schaefer said, what would 2 weeks later look like? What would the middle of September look like? So there were 3 versions sent to you, that were 4 versions. The third version was the 2-week later start. That is the most restrictive. That pulls some things out that we normally have in place. The 4th version was the original that was approved in January. And then version 1 and 2 were a 1 week later, starting the day after Labor Day. So both of those have a start date of September 8th, an end date of June 17th. Teachers start on August 31st, and their end date is June 18th. They both have off Yom Kippur. In-service days prior to, there are 5 in-service days in version 1 prior to students coming. There are 4 in version 2. Version 1 does not have the October 12th in-service day, which is something that we had already scheduled with one of our vendors to provide PD. Version 2 does have that day in place on October 12th. Students in session before spring break, both of those have students being in session on Monday before spring break, and then conferences and in-service days were moved to Tuesday and Wednesday instead of Monday and Tuesday, so that shortens that break a little bit. May 18th in-service day for both of those dates were pulled. Parent-teacher conferences for both of those days were moved to Tuesday, Wednesday, as I mentioned before, and then the February 12th stays in place. Emergency days stay the same, 3 days at the end of the year as per normal. We instead of having 5 additional in-service days throughout the year, which we are currently practice, there are 4 in place. The teachers generally have a day off that Wednesday before Thanksgiving. That would not be in place if we follow this calendar. Students in session the Monday before Thanksgiving, as I mentioned before, yes, they are. And then President's Day is an emergency day. February 15th is identified as an emergency day for those two schedules. So they're very similar. The big difference is that October 12th in Service Day, we felt that having that in place while still having an extra day at the beginning of the year made the most sense with PD with our teachers. Version 3, if you are interested in the 2-week model, I could talk about that. It is less desirable. The start date for students is September 14th and ends June 22nd. The start date for teachers is June 8th and ends June 23rd. There are 4 in-service days. They do not have Yom Kippur off. There is no October 12th in-service day. Students are in session before that Wednesday before, they are in session that Wednesday before spring break. The May in-service day is back in place. The parent-teacher conferences remain the same. The 3 emergency days at the end of the year are June 18th, June 21st, and June 22nd. Instead of, we normally follow 5 additional emergency days, this has 3. The other 2 versions had 4. The teachers do not have that Wednesday off before Thanksgiving. Students are in session the Monday before Thanksgiving, and the students and staff do not have off that on President's Day, February 15th. That is a day in session. So those are probably the salient points. Sure, we can come up with a few different options for that. The other thing to mention that we may want to consider as a district is that we have the opportunity to apply for FIDS, which is flexible instruction days. And what we could do with that is, now that we have a cyber option up and running, if we apply for those, then we could, in a sense, if we have to cancel school due to inclement weather, that could alter our calendar, in that we would not have to make up that day. We could just be a flexible instruction day, where students would learn virtually on that day if the mechanism is in place. We've not applied for that in the past. We didn't have it. We didn't have the technology in place, but if we do, that is something that as an administrative team we can consider. So that's the quick. I can bring back some versions next week to you if you prefer, if you want some time to consider.
With the flexible instruction days, wouldn't that be a problem though, given the number of students we have and the number of seats that we are looking at licensing, or is that flexible at that point?
Well, that would be done through Canvas, which we have for all of our students.
Thank you.
Yep.
I would be interested in hearing next week what your recommendation would be as an administrative team on about putting forth one or more of the professional development days in the beginning of the school year.
Absolutely.
I would as well.
And my understanding of the goal is that we're looking at trying to not start later in the school year, but pull some of our professional development days up to the front of the year.
Correct.
I have one comment and one question. I do invite the board, to follow through what Mr. DeBello said, to the first finance meeting. I'd love to have you guys there. Question is, and I heard this from a couple of parents, well, several parents, and including my daughter. Are they required to use the Chromebooks as opposed to using their personal Mac for technology?
My understanding is no. I think the only time there'd be an issue, I think if they had to come back into school, they couldn't use it in school. There's a problem with firewalls or
right.
But yeah, I don't think there's a. I'm getting the nod that there's no problem with them using their own laptops.
Thank you.
That's a great question. I've also been asked this too by a number of parents.
Thank you, Madam President.
Oh, you're welcome, Mr. Jackson. But I've been getting a number of questions too with parents saying if they chose to purchase computers for their children's use, would they be able to use those, which is basically an extension, I believe, of what Mr. Jackson is asking. I wouldn't want, but I think your clarification was good, Dr. Gooden, that yeah, they could use those at home during this, but once we go back into the classroom, those computers, please don't hang your hat on the fact that you could bring those computers in and that could happen. If you decide to purchase an item for your son or daughter for while their use at home during this, so be it. but know that that wouldn't be a school authorized piece of technology to bring into the classroom should we potentially move into the other phase where they do come in.
And for some students, that may be difficult, especially our younger students. So if, for example, they're working with, an iPad at home, but then they come in and in the classroom, they're working on a Chromebook, just because they're different platforms may create some confusion and difficulty on the migration when we do move into a yellow phase.
Okay, any other board comment there? Okay, with that, we are going to have public comment. Is the board in favor of the 2-minute time limit with no restriction on the length of time? Okay, I'm not getting, I know, I'm not getting any negatives on that. However, since we started with the public comment on the Zoom last time, I'm going to invite Mr. Olson, who's up to the mic in person, to speak first, and then we will go, poor Mrs. Olson stood the whole time last time, sorry about that. And then we will go to the Zoom participants after Mr. Olson's comment.
Thank you. My name is Roland Olson. I live at 711 Sourwood Lane. I just want to start out and say I don't think it's fair that people are saying your decision here tonight is life or death, or should it ever be. The governor didn't want schools to open. He's certainly capable of taking that on himself. That's what he's elected to do. He has an entire Department of Health reporting to him. The PA Department of Health said schools can open, so we can take that for what it is. I don't think red is something that we can sit on or be content with. I'd like to see more of an orange right now as we look at other possibilities. So I'm disappointed. The most creative solution that I've heard tonight was that, hey, it's in-person, no in-person classes or the charter school. I haven't heard anything over the last couple of weeks, anything creative along the lines of uses of our massive facilities and square footage to, perhaps in person, the senior class alone, 650 kids. If the facilities meant for 8,000, is that not distributed enough? Nothing proposed along the lines of using the auditorium for in-person teaching, say AP classes. That would be very college-like, and certainly I would think that the auditorium is big enough for safe teaching for all. I'm encouraged by the flexibility for the IEP kids. I know that's going to make a lot of families happy out there, and the protocols to be developed to in-person with these kids. I think there's opportunity then that we can quickly apply these same safety protocols and teaching protocols for in-person IEPs to bring our seniors and their teachers back quickly as well. Additionally, I do have a question that came up recently, and I still am puzzled by it. How does Springford not have the ability to live stream classes? My 12-year-old can live stream Fortnite sessions to all of her friends, but our Springford teachers can't live stream classes during red. And also, if contact surfaces were passing COVID, I think everybody would agree with this, then everyone in the district would have COVID 5 times over based on the 6 essential service Wawas that we have here locally.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. We're at the 2 minutes. Thank you. Okay. So, Mr. Catalano, are you prepared to bring us the participants on the Zoom?
Yes, we have 8 hands raised currently. First up is Ed Hudak. Ed, please unmute yourself, first and last name, full address, and your comment, please.
Hi, this is Ed Hudak. I'm at 10 William Penn Drive, Schwenksville, Pennsylvania. And I'd like to say that I'm disappointed in my opinion, the positive, negative items that are discussed. For instance, Dr. Gooden, you said that we're going to be having build a better product, and we've had 4 months to do it, yet we haven't purchased a system and we haven't trained a teacher yet. Last week, you said, Mr. Gooden, the grant money is in the bank. You referenced a certain individual saying, yes, he had it, yet we don't have the grant money to buy our PPE yet. Mr. Jackson, great point saying, what about the open schools? If the school is closed, the school is closed. If you, the school board and the administration, are making the decision that the school is closed, then how can you say the PIAA can open it and say that athletics and other events can use those facilities because they're outside? Mr. DeBello, you are 100% accurate in questioning that, and I applaud both Mr. Jackson and Mr. DeBello for asking the tough questions and not getting prompt responses and accurate responses regarding that. Likewise, Mr. DeBello, I believe you're 100% correct in the aspect of we've just added $1.8 million to our financial budget that is unaccounted for, on top of the tax increase that we had this year, and then looking at 2021, where both the teachers union contract in addition to the superintendent contracts both expire, we are looking to tax out our stewards from this school district because of the increases that we're going to be looking at seeing. Hopefully, I'd like to see a strong oversight and ethics committees put in place, that there is strong accounting and accountability for all the finances that are spent for all these products, and that we know where they're going for and that every dime is accounted for. Thank you for your time.
Next up is Kim Anderson. You may now make public comment. Please unmute yourself, first and last name and full address, please.
Hi, can you hear me? This is Kim Anderson, 123 Patriot Drive, Collegeville. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank
Yes,
you.
we can.
Okay, so I've been on the last, about 4 school board meetings. I was denied the ability to speak at the last meeting because you guys put it off until the 3 a.m. I just don't understand what happened in the last meetings that we somehow ended up in the red phase. I thought we were going to be green or yellow. I did miss the earlier part of the meeting, maybe about 40 minutes. So I'm not sure what happened that we are now voting, that you voted for red, virtual learning. I will say after the last meeting, I did not have confidence in the virtual program, charter, cyber program that Springford School District is offering. So the next day, while on vacation, I did enroll my children into PALCS, which is PA Leadership Cyber School, which I have to tell you was a horrible decision, and I was choked up making it the whole entire time. And when I contacted the 6th grade principal, I told him what was happening. I was choked up explaining it, and I don't want to take dollars away from the school district, but I just still haven't gotten any confidence in the virtual program that you guys are going to be offering. I don't know Diane's last name, but I do want to give Diane accolades for expressing her opinion about this idea about the vaccine. I feel like there's a lot of people that are hanging their hats on the vaccine to get our lives back to normal. And just to, put that out there, we've never had a vaccine to any coronavirus to date. We've had many. I don't want to be in a position where I'm going to be forced to have my children vaccinated. I do get my children vaccinated, but I will not be getting a brand new on the market vaccine with no history.
Mrs. Anderson, thank you. We're beyond the 2 minutes, but thank you very much for your comments.
Next up is Kristen Gebhard. You may now make public comment. Please unmute yourself, first and last name and full address, please. Kristen, please unmute. Next up is Kathy. Kathy, please unmute yourself, first and last name and full address, please.
Kathy Morris, 420 Church Street, Royersford. To say virtual and charter are viable options is kind of a joke. They're one and the same bartering curriculum, but I just hope next week, after sitting on meeting after meeting, we actually have some details worked out. To vote on a plan with really no details is a little bit nerve-wracking. People do still have to start to plan for their children in the fall, and week after week we just keep tabling things. And while I respect the fact that you are really trying to do your best to come up with the best options. I feel like these teams, red, yellow, green, should have basically had a lot of this stuff worked out so that if in fact we did pick their phase, they could have answered a lot more of these details. So again, I appreciate your time spent, but I mean, I hope next week really answers a lot of questions.
Next up is Dennis Wright. Dennis, please unmute yourself, first and last name and full address, please.
Thank you. Dennis Wright, 9 Annette Drive, Limerick, Pennsylvania, 19468. I was unable to attend this night's meetings. I've been there the last few weeks. I'm going to play teacher for a few minutes. I'll give you an A in making a decision. I'll give the school administration an incomplete in planning. I think you're missing a lot. If you've spent all this time and energy in making your education more special, I haven't heard about it. I'll give you an A in spending money, and I look forward to you improving both of those grades. Thank you.
Next up is Michael Lebedinsky. Michael, please unmute yourself, first and last name and full address, please.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Michael Lebedinsky, 2005, Willowa Drive in Royersford. I had two questions. One is, can you please address what will happen with the $5 million bus contract when we have opening in the red phase and no busing for the majority of the students? And secondly, I'll be writing a piece for Spotlight PA, and I wanted to just make sure I got the facts from Dr. Good. What I heard was that the primary constraint to opening in any other phase but red was that the district failed to obtain the required PPA that's required by the PPA mandate. Is that correct?
No, it's not. It was one variable in our considerations.
But because it was not purchased, there was no other phase to open but red, correct?
Sir, this is public comment, not a question and answer session, please.
Okay, I'll need to get the answer offline from our. Thank you.
Next up is Lauren Rafter. Lauren, you may now make public comment. Please unmute yourself, first and last name and full address, please.
Hi, Lauren Rafter, 4 Jessica Circle in Schwenksville. Just a couple comments. Regarding the red plan, I just can't stress enough that we really need to have as much synchronous learning as possible. Live streaming the teacher, I think that's critical. In terms of teachers and where they teach from, whether it's home or in their classroom, you surveyed the parents, survey the teachers. I mean, I think their opinion matters the most. Some parents or some teachers are also parents, so it's going to be, an issue. They might have kids at home. Underlying health conditions, I think there's just a lot to consider there as well. And then masks, that's a huge budget item. I think many families would not need masks, so I would just recommend to, again, survey, see what families need masks, and only purchase those that need them. Thank you.
Next up is Joy Crowell. Joy, you may now make public comment. Please unmute yourself, first and last name and full address, please.
Hi, this is Joy Crowell, 5 Linden Way, Collegeville, PA, 19426. I would first like to say thanks, Clint and Mr. DeBella, for all your great input and asking the hard, good questions. I'm really all over the place with my thoughts right now. I can't even believe that we're not opening and we're in the red and there is no choice. After all this time, I can't believe that it will not be all synchronous learning with 5 months to plan this. Cyber school is nothing like synchronous learning either. It's still go at your own pace. There's nothing like having that teacher in front of you, whether it be in person or online, since that's what we're faced with right now. And I think that that's what we've been focused on way more than anything else. And I agree with, if we can't open up for school, but can open up for sports, I just don't understand. And this is coming from someone that has a child that plays sports. I just don't understand how we couldn't get it together to order supplies. that shouldn't even be a variable right now. Where was the thought in all this 5 months ago? Where was the ordering, the planning, the organization, the detail, the plan? It's just, I just don't even know. But thanks, Mr. Jackson and Mr. DeBella, for everything that you've been doing and listening to all the people out there.
Next up is Kayla Wright. Kayla, you may now make public comment. Please unmute yourself. First and last name and your full address, please.
Hi, my name is Kayla Wright, 61 Elmar Circle in Royersford. First, I'd like to say thanks to everyone in the administration and on the board. I know that this has been a hard choice to make, and everyone's in a difficult position. I'm a Springford alum. I moved back to the area specifically so that my son can also be a Springford grad one day. He is currently in second grade. I'm concerned not only with the new financial burden that this is going to put on working and single parents like myself, but also how the education, all of this online learning is going to be kind of thrown together again, being that the system is not in place. I'm going to be back to working full time and teaching all night, and because my 7-year-old doesn't know how to meet by himself or whatever it is. So I'm hoping that once the PPE has been acquired, maybe we can do some type of choice in opening, red or green, where parents can make that choice themselves. And that's it. Thanks so much again for everything that you've all done.
Next up is Liz Kepner. Liz. Laptop is not because it's using the old. Liz, you have an old version of Zoom. I'm sorry, you can't talk. Next up is Sarah. Sarah, you may now make public comment. Please unmute yourself and state your first and last name and your full address.
Hello, it's Sarah Denoris at 3 Buckley Circle. I wanted to call in here again at the end of the meeting to say, as somebody who publicly supported the virtual reopening and worked to support that, I want to thank the board and the administration for your work tonight and over the past several weeks. I know that this was not an easy decision or an inexpensive decision, and I respect your many concerns and perspective on this decision. The fact remains that you've chosen to put the health and safety of our students and teachers first, and I have the utmost respect for that. I think that of the districts that have not yet made their decision, they'll be looking to Springford as a leader, and I think that we can go ahead and lead in that way with this decision. So thank you for your support for the virtual learning. I also hope that you will continue to explore that flexibility piece to support all of the students that may need those in-person services or telemedicine services. I think that you can make that happen with the right planning. So I hope that nobody will be left out of this. Thank you.
Next up is Heather Staley. Heather, please unmute yourself. The first and last name and full address, please.
Heather Staley, 412 New Street, Spring City, Pennsylvania, 19475. I spoke earlier, and all I'd like to say is I'm a little sad and upset. I know some of the board members also asked this as well. How can other school districts offer parents choice? I understand you guys are trying to put all the kids ahead and all the kids taken into consideration. However, you don't know my child like I do. You don't know my next door neighbor's child like they do. And I still think the choice is the right choice. I don't feel that, and maybe this isn't the way you meant it, but Dr. Gooden, you made us all feel like you went to red because there was not enough money to get the PPE because you couldn't get the grant. That is what conveyed tonight, and that made me upset that that was what prevented us from having a choice, prevented us from being able to make a decision as a parent. I will go forward with this and try and support my child as I always do, but I really hope you will continue working to try and give us parents the choice that we desperately need to help our children. Thank you.
That is all the hands that were raised as of right now.
With that, is there,
Liz Kepner,
is there,
she was unable to unmute before.
I'm sorry?
Sorry, we have one more. Liz Kepner, she couldn't unmute before. Liz, if you can unmute now.
Hi, yes, I'm here. Sorry for that inconvenience. Can you hear me?
Yes. First and last name, full address, please.
Yes, Liz Kepner, 19 Leatherwood Drive, Collegeville. I would first like to commend the board and administration for making the tough decision to open in red. I fully agree with this, and I know it's been very difficult for everyone involved. I understand that at some point we are going to need to move back and move forward into other phases. And when we do need to address that, I am hoping that there is a choice given to parents. I know that is a word that has been coming up a lot today. And I do think that it would be great if the red option could remain a choice for parents, because I do think that the cyber school is not solving the parents' problems of wanting to keep their child at home. The cyber school doesn't provide live instruction. It does not use the same materials as Springford. And I don't see how there will be able to be any allowing back and forth in between cyber and brick and mortar. It just won't be fluid for the students or the teachers. The cyber option doesn't provide any social emotional check-ins that Dr. Murray explains about the advantages of the red phase. The students need the live connection to their teachers and to their home schools. And to me, cyber school doesn't seem like a choice for parents who want their kids to be home. It seems more like the last resort. Thank you, and good luck making these tough decisions.
There's one more, Kim Anderson. Kim, please unmute yourself. First and last name and full address.
Hi, Kim Anderson, 123 Patriot Drive, College Hill. I did speak earlier and I unfortunately got cut off. And I just want to give a little bit more of a positive spin on my last speech. I just want to let you all know that I do appreciate what you've been doing. I think it's been the most incredibly difficult position to be in. And but I want you to know that making this decision to sign up my children for a cyber charter school last week was the most horrific thing that I've felt in a long time. And I just want you to hear the emotion that parents are feeling right now over the decisions that we're making. I love our district. I love our teachers. I love everything about Springford. That's why we live here. I want our kids back in this district and, you know, enjoying all of these wonderful teachers. So just please hear this in our voices, okay? Because a lot of us feel this way. We love this district and we want our kids to be enjoying all of everything that you have to offer, okay? So I hope it happens again soon. Thank you so much.
One more hand is raised. Arlene Hudak. Arlene, please unmute yourself. First and last name and full address, please.
Hi, my name's Arlene Hudak, 10 William Penn Drive, Schwanksville, PA. I just wanted to say thank you for everyone calling in tonight with all their comments and concerns. I am surprised that we are going red. I thought that we would have the decision as parents to take into consideration what we thought was best for our children. I did think that Mr. Olson had a great idea tonight to let the seniors go in and do their last year there. I am wondering how the sports will be done. I'm hoping that's something that can continue and that will help all the children in our district, maybe socially and emotionally as well. I think we have to get our teachers online with all the new Canvas and everything that's out there. And I hope that we continue supporting the teachers as well as our children. And I thank you all for doing the hard work that you do. Have a good evening.
Okay, no more hands are raised.
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And a second? Meeting adjourned. Thank you.